Yes, sir. We're ready.
Mic's on, please. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Sugar Land City Council meeting for Tuesday, January the 24th. A little bit about the meeting tonight. In a minute, we're going to go through the public comment. Those of you that are here for one of the, either the workshop or the joint workshop are going to be invited to speak at that time. What we'll do is we will have, go ahead, Thomas. You got it on?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
You'll be invited to speak at that time. You'll have 3 minutes. If when you approach the podium, if you'll identify yourself, give your address, and then we'll give you 3 minutes. City Council will not be able to respond to you. We will, however, during the presentations, provide a lot of facts. I know there is a lot of things that have been said. I will tell you that is non-factual information. So we'll attempt to clear that up for you tonight. As always, we represent you all, so feel free to reach out to us. Item number 1, public comment. And just because you're not signed up doesn't mean you can't speak. So I'm gonna, what's the echo, Thomas? You're lucky. There we go. The first speaker that's registered is Robin Cole. Robin, if you'll approach the podium up there, you'll have 3 minutes. Name, address, and then the item that you want to speak on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Cole. My address is 6023 Hanchford Lane in Sugar Land, Texas. I want to speak on the use of the Imperial Chart House. I'm a 26-year resident of Sugar Land, and I live in New Territory. I'm here on behalf of the Society of Justice and Equality for the People of Sugar Land. Our mission, we're a 501c3 organization, and we want to unite in the causes of social justice and equality, specifically for the Sugar Land 95. We believe as a community, it's imperative that we all do the difficult work of confronting our history of racial injustice, telling the truth while understanding that our painful yet candid connection with history also shapes our present and helps build a future embedded in justice. We believe that the Imperial Chart House is a historical monument which we believe should be preserved as well as be used as a museum, or at least 1 or 2 floors as a museum, to include examples of the positive contribution of the African American people and other nationalities who built the city of Sugar Land. Our goal is to educate, honor, and heal. I relocated here from Pennsylvania. I'm a chemical engineer. I work for Dow Chemical, I work for Shell Oil, and I work for Allied Chemical. So I know when you deal with a chemical like sugar, and you're the one who plants that sugar cane and cuts the sugar cane, and then you have to boil it in order to refine it, that is a technical skill. And these people have not received the credit that they are deserving of. All the books I have read about Sugar Land does not include in a positive way the contributions of the African American people. And I also know when you read about the old 300, they brought 443 African Americans with them, whether they were enslaved or not. After the Civil War in 1865, there was no more labor. So they used the convict leasing system in an effort to have labor. And these people, when you look at the people who died, those 95 people, they range in age from age 16, 18 years old, 21 years old, 25 years old. They died within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, legs cut off, toes cut off. It's in a report of Corporate ISD's website. So I'm here to say that I plead with you. I work with you as a partner. My granddaughter's there. She's in the 5th grade. She's Corporate ISD. The truth needs to be told, and it's not just for the people of Sugar Land. It's for the people in the world. This is American history. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second speaker is Charles Nielsen, Dr. Charles Nielsen. Charles.
That's the first list. It's hot.
Charles Nielsen, MD, resident of Sugar Land since 1985 at 322 Oyster Creek Drive. Are we the people of Sugar Land going to stand by and watch our city council violate the city's 2018 land use plan? It turns out the city council is about to pass a bill to allow the number of multifamily use units at the Imperial Sugar Refractory Char House redevelopment to increase from a planned 526 to 1,200 people or units. The problem with this is that it will increase the population density in the small original part of Old Sugar Land, enough to destroy everything that existed here to attract migration and growth of Sugar Land in the first place. The site is complicated by the existence of a very busy railroad track hampering access to easy crossing on both sides, leading to similar traffic congestion most migrants left to come here for. Not too long ago, Sugar Land was a very attractive town and country bedroom community within short distance to the urban chaos of Houston and the quiet country life that predominated here. But since the 1980s, our city council has developed the rest of Sugar Land into a multitude of housing plats, along with projects so expensive that our county tax board has had to maximize the assessments every year to attempt to sustain the unnecessary debts incurred to make Sugar Land a great place to move to. Heck, it was already a great place to move to back in the 70s and 80s. But building all these complexes and other developments that generates big taxes and developer schemes has already turned off many of the original migrants who live here now and are slowly but surely watching it turn into an expensive and nearly exclusive enclave that has lost its town and country flair. Many would say that the debts incurred to the taxpayers here are not warranted when we see megabuck entities like the Children's Museum, the Smart Financial Center, where every performance costs in the hundreds of dollars, and one ephemeral enterprise after another at the Imperial Factory that is always being developed. The upshot is that the apartments never increase the value of any real estate area unless you count the potential commercial benefits to benefit the business enterprises that swarm in simply for monetary gain. But in this particular instance, the surrounding homes in this sector will soon find the environs comparable to the Hill Park Avenue, I-69, and West Park corridor in Houston, with tacky storefronts and horrible traffic, which is exactly why older Sugar Land immigrants left Houston. True, we have fine police force and our security is very good, but that will deteriorate as the population density moves forward. Every community residential association near Old Sugar Land has gone on record against such apartment development being contemplated at the Imperial Sugar Factory. As the current busy traffic and busy railway crossing will turn into a morass if apartments increase the population density here. It's time for our representatives to listen to the constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nielsen. Our next speaker is Leon Anheuser. Leon?
My name is Leon Anheuser. I live at 164 North Hall Drive,
Sugar Land, Texas. I am a resident of 84 years and a native. And I agree with the previous speaker. I went to the presentations about with Puma about what they were planning to do, and at no time, at any time, was any suggestions made about additional apartments, only about what they were going to accomplish and do in the Char House. And it also sounded so wonderful, and it is wonderful, except for the fact that suddenly at the footnote, they changed it from 526 to 1,200 multifamily units in 6-story buildings, which surely will help the skyline with all these apartment buildings 6 stories high. So I think the city residents have over the years, I can't tell you how many meetings I went to, opposed this high concentration of apartments. And I hope you'll look at your history and realize that this is not what the citizens want. And as a resident right there at Hall Lake, Brook Street is always a prime area for traffic. And it's going to go right into that small area or come out of that small area. So we were told it might close that intersection. But on the other hand, when I see these footnotes hidden that were never discussed, that doesn't mean anything's going to happen except they're going to dump all those people down Brook Street. So traffic, number one for us. We already have a big problem on Brook Street. It's going to get worse with 1,200 apartments. And I'd like the city council to eliminate the footnote, let POMA do their job like they say they're going to do their job, and forget this adding on of all these apartments. Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speaker is Mark McDonald.
Hello, I'm Mark McDonald. I live at 114 Cherry Street, Sugar Land, Texas. Been here since 1987. I don't know that I can add a whole lot to what's already been said regarding the apartments out there. I just know that a precedent is about to be set from what I understand at this point in time, but that's why I'm here at this meeting, is to find out what the facts are. That if we start putting in large apartment developments in here, there's plenty of land around here where we're going to see these start to spring up elsewhere. And all you have to do is run up 99 to Katy and see what's going on up there. And I don't think that anybody here as a resident of Sugar Land wants to see that kind of activity. While I understand that you need enough traffic to be able to pull off the Char House, and living within less than a quarter of a mile from the Char House, I want to see it developed. I want to see something done. I would think that if you put together enough of an attractive venue there, you're going to be able to pull people from a long distance. Some of the examples that were given were the San Antonio development. I can't think of the place down on the Riverwalk, as well as Green Hall and others. People come from many miles away to that. I don't know that we necessarily need to put apartments up to be able to support what's going to be taking place at the Char House. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Our next guest is Farah Ahmed.
Good evening. I live at 6 Ellicott Way. I've been living in Sugar Land since 1990, and I'm here to speak about the Char House. On the city website, we talk about the preservation of our history, and as a city, we take that very seriously, especially about the history about forced labor, which is also known as convict leasing. And, you know, as a city, we're dedicated to tell the whole history. And when we put our mind to it, we do a fantastic job as a city. And I think that it's the right thing to do to make sure that the Char House has a dedicated space to this history. I truly believe it's a moral imperative on our part to continue the history that we've been revealing right here in our city. The other issue that I see that is very concerning to citizens is the issue of apartments. I acknowledge what the previous speakers have been talking about, the increased number of apartments, all the way up to 1,200. Now, last year, the city council actually voted against an apartment development that was near Sugar Creek because they felt that it would negatively impact the surrounding areas. Many of us are really concerned about the 1,200 apartments that could be built in the whole area of the Char House. There's no real detail whether it's all apartments or is it condominiums or townhomes. We're worried about the impact that it's going to have on our infrastructure and more importantly on our schools and who's going to take care of all those families. I want to make sure that we're thoughtful about that development and the impact it has on our city. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. May. Our next speaker, our next guest is Dakia Hewick.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the time to come up here and speak. My name is Dakia Ewing. I am a fairly new resident to Sugar Land, recently relocated from San Antonio, which ironically has a concentration of apartments. I realize that the Char House development is something that the city has been working on for some time. But in light of what previous people said, the council took into consideration the negative impact other sizable apartment complexes would have on the city. And I agree that this one would also have a negative impact, not only to the traffic, as one gentleman put it, but to city resources, police, fire, social services, that type of thing. And I really think that minimizing the amount of apartments that are built within this area, I mean, just for property tax benefits alone, keeping the city as happy and vibrant as it is today, it's absolutely necessary to keep things as they are and not throw in apartments just for the sake of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeff Dodson. Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Zimmerman, council members. My name is Jeff Dodson, been a resident of Sugar Land. This isn't made for tall people. I've been a resident of Sugar Land over 20 years. I'm a realtor here in Fort Bend County, and I can appreciate the understanding that apartment housing allows us to somewhat complete the chain in the city of Sugar Land. That people moving up from apartments into single family housing is an aspect that we currently don't have. Having said that, I think the Char House location isn't the right place for it, primarily because of the railroad track and the logistic nightmare that it already is. I live in Sugar Mill at 506 Mill Place Court. I forgot to mention that. And the overpass on Highway 6 is a blessing because you can't count on getting through the traffic lights because of the train near the Char House now. We add 1,200 residents. It's going to increase that traffic problem. I think if apartments are considered necessary in the Sugar Land area, there are other places that are better suited than the Char House. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next guest is Kenyatta Davis. Ms. Davis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenyatta Davis. I live at 7500 Branford Place in Sugar Land. I have been to many places. I must say I love Sugar Land. I've been all over the world for my job and absolutely love Sugar Land. I am all for the Char House having the renovations. However, this is not what was proposed a month ago. They gave different examples of 4 places around the nation and said these are the examples of what it should look like. It was never a mention of 660 housing units. I felt like I was bamboozled. I was cheering it on, and I got a hard pause today. So I think that, yes, they should move forward with renovations, but I don't think this is the way. Not 660 units. That's going to be a high traffic area. There's going to be an increase in crime. There's going to be more resources that are going to be utilized by the city. There are 5 ambulances, possibly 6 that's going to be coming on board. That's a multi-million-dollar revenue that's going to be sent out. We have to factor in all these different details. Another thing is, if there was a way to put the tentative map up on the screen, you will see there is a little green space that's going to be proposed for this. Most of it is residential. It's going to be eyesore. The other part is a little part is commercial. We don't know what those commercial buildings are going to be. It might be a check cashing place. It might be a liquor store. We have no idea. Everything keeps getting thrown on us at the last minute. So I think more things need to go ahead and come out and let us be able to have the best decision that we're making. Now, I do think there are a lot of apartment buildings around the city. I've been all over the city. There are lots of buildings, apartment buildings, some that are straight in your face, some are hidden. Lots of them. There's also a lot of neighboring towns here too. So if someone wants to go ahead and go from apartments, they have a lot of choices here already. Why have more? Because normally with more people comes more crime. That's not one of the things that attracted me to Sugar Land is crime. The low crime attracted me to it, the scenery, being a homeowner, being a part of the community. I'm part of the leadership program. I want to make sure my voice is heard. I'm just really opposed to this idea, not the idea of it happening, just this particular one. So I think maybe if we go back to the table and find a better middle ground, things will be a lot better. I think the biggest thing that I keep hearing, the common denominator is all the housing. I can't imagine all this
About
stuff.
20 seconds left.
Yes. So with that said, again, I oppose this particular idea. We should have a revision of it, and then we can go ahead and go from there. Again, I love Sugar Land. It's not this idea. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have anyone else signed up, but would anyone else like to speak?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My name is James Patterson. Came here in 1965 and been living in the same house since 1967. The first time that we've had 5, I think the lady at last public hearing said we'd had 5 different presenters of ideas, but this is the first one that has come and said the Char House is a positive. Everybody else has said it's an albatross around your neck. This presenter said the Char House is a positive. So that was exciting. Know that there's a possibility that the Char House is a positive is wonderful. Talk about the apartments in the 50s and 60s. Sugar Land Industries did a great job and said to all the people in Sugar Land, you need to own. You're not going to rent in Sugar Land, you're going to own. And they went to the people and said, here, you're going to buy your property. You ain't renting anymore. You're going to buy the property for the same amount you've been renting, because they realize that ownership causes people to care about the whole community for all the time. We get caught up in the fact that apartments, and some people feel like we're talking about that they're bad people. They're not bad people. They're people who are not going to buy into the PTA at the school. They're not going to be a part of the booster club. because they're there for a short period of time. They're not there for the duration. That's what has made Sugar Land a wonderful place, is we know that if you're in trouble, when our son was born in 1965, this community rallied around us that day. They rally around us every day. So he's a special need young man. I think the PD says 276 units there. I could be wrong. I've not got involved in Sugar Land in the city council as much as I should. Promise you tomorrow. The idea that we moved from 276 to 1,200 caused me to start writing and get up here. I wasn't going to come up here, Mayor. The ways that it could help the development is simple things, like the developer spoke about the issues with Oyster Creek and how the water's not flowing, whatever. If the city and the developer asked the county to remove 3 railroad bridges out of that creek, it would happen quickly, because the county needs those railroad bridges out of that creek and let that creek flow. It would make the creek much nicer, be easier to develop. You could develop some things along the creek without a cost to the developer. But Sugar Land is known for communicating. I'm sorry that I've been reluctant in getting involved, but I went to the public meetings, and what I heard at the public meetings doesn't match what we're hearing tonight. And what we're hearing tonight may not be right, Mayor. I realize that.
All right. 10 seconds, James.
I just was going to say, but just appreciate the opportunity to join.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone on either one of the agenda items? We're going to go ahead and close the public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Doug Goff, resident of Sugar Land for about 27 years. I live in Imperial, and I've been there for 7 years now. And I've retired, but my past 20 plus years have been with Johnson Development. We have developed thousands of multifamily units in master plan communities where you have strict deed restrictions on the quality and character of the buildings themselves and deed restrictions on the long-term maintenance of them. I think any indication that this would be less than a first quality project is probably incorrect. I know that the city has incredible restrictions with respect to the design of the facilities and the long-term maintenance. You look at Riverstone, Sienna, Imperial, and several other communities that we've developed, as well as the multifamily that's been in First Colony for 20, 25 years. It's still very acceptable housing properties. And today's environment is just not people who are looking to rent for a short period of time. But that is the case. You know, many of them will buy in your community because they love it. Their kids are going to school there. But at the same time, it also provides housing for elder couples who want to live near their children, for single parents and individuals. So my point is that I have not seen in any instance in our multifamily communities or in our master plan communities where it's been a negative issue. And I deal with the railroad every day, and I've never waited more than 3 to 5 minutes. And maybe with the multifamily housing, it might be a little more than that, but it's not that big a deal. And my point is, I really support the opportunity to make this happen, because if it doesn't, we've had 3 developers involved in this project and nobody has been able to put it together. And today I think Thun has got the courage and the capability of making this happen, but it has to have the ability to have a mix of uses of commercial, retail, and residential to make it work. Otherwise, it's another dead duck. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All right, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna change the way, things are set up. We're gonna move to number 3. If we'll bring the Planning and Zoning Commission in, we're gonna go straight to item number 3. We're gonna postpone the workshop, item number 2. I want to keep a continuity so that the people that are here in the rooms can get the facts as opposed to what they're hearing on social media.
Did planning and zoning have the opportunity to hear the 10 comments? Were they listening on the comments?
Carolyn.
Yeah, they were sitting in the chamber. Okay, so they got to hear the comments. Okay, good.
Yeah, we should have them in here.
I don't know why they couldn't come in and say.
Well,
Is this all sci-fi?
they heard it and we gave them the option of coming in and we were going to go to
Okay.
another agenda item. So
Okay, as long as they heard it, I was eager to hear the comments. Okay.
I'm going to know report tonight, of course.
Huh?
I'm going to know report tonight.
Okay. Okay, I'll report. Where's the dog tonight? Why? So he could have been here for the fight.
They come like this. I'll do aerospace.
Yeah, for fitting.
That's fine.
Uh-huh.
How are you?
this time we're going to move to item number 3, the joint workshop with a quorum of the Planning and Zoning Commission members. And I'm going to allow Matt to open his meeting and I'll read the agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now call to order the Thursday, January 24th, 2023 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission in joint session with City Council. Thank you for having us, Mayor.
Item number 3, a review of and discussion on the proposed Imperial Historic District General Development Plan and Land Use Plan Amendment. We've got with us tonight Devin Rodriguez from Economic Development. We've got Mark Toon from Puma. We've got Lauren Fair from our Planning and Development Services and Ruth Lomer from Planning and Development Services. And I think between all 4 speakers, we can kind of clear up some of the innuendo that's out there in the community. Deb, you want to open it?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I am going to kick off this workshop. So I wanted to start off with, hold on, let me get the redevelopment. We've been saying the word a lot. This is a city council top priority. And you might be wondering why, what is it? You might be surprised to know that we in the city of Sugar Land only have 4% of our land that is undeveloped. We are reaching build out. We do not have opportunities for expanding our boundaries and kind of continuing other greenfield type development. We have other cities that are around us now versus when we first started building Sugar Land. And why that's critical and important is because we have to do the best that we can with the land that we have remaining. We have to make that land the most valuable, highest and best use of that land as possible. And why that's important to everybody here in Sugar Land is that that's how we derive our revenues in order to continue to provide those highest quality services and amenities in our community. So we have to do the best with what we have. If the topic of redevelopment, that includes infill, because that is just as valuable. It also includes recreating or scraping or adaptive reuse of existing properties that we already have. The Imperial project is one of those top priorities that we have for redevelopment. There is obviously the desire to be able to preserve our history, which is how this community got its start. We were a company town. There's also, now I lost my train of thought. Also the desire of the land that is remaining around there, those infill sites, to how can we build it to the highest and best use as possible. Some of you have heard me speak before about the economic development impact cycle and how important that is. It all starts with jobs. That's why it started with Imperial Sugar. Imperial Sugar created jobs. People came to Sugar Land. That created demand for housing. Those people then bought their homes, moved into duplexes, whatever the housing actually that was available that Imperial Sugar developed for them to move into. And slowly the community grew because it attracted other individuals to move here, and that created demand for retail and dining. All of that cycle has to go in that order to create that supply and that demand for the next use that needs to come along. And we need to continue to kind of improve on that cycle as we improve Sugar Land to be, a trailblazing community of the best that we can make it be into the future. So this redevelopment is one of our 5 all-in initiatives of a top priority. We are taking a proactive approach to this project. I've emphasized before that we are really at step 0. We involved the community and we're outward with the community on this project earlier on than we normally would have. The land is not owned by Puma Development yet. There is only a purchase agreement. And there are certain critical points that are going to need to be met in order for this project to even move forward. But we want to involve the community early on what is going to be required to make maybe this project happen. And there are going to be trade-offs. And so I think we're going to cover some of that tonight. And just as kind of a recap, I guess, on where we are in other steps of the project, is there have been financial requests that have been made. And we did approve a $5 million reimbursement agreement on January 3rd for pre-development costs so that we could move along on some of these pre-development type things that need to be done to even see if we can make this project a reality. There's a lot of pre-work that needs to go into a project like this to even see if we can make it possible. So that $5 million reimbursement agreement was approved. Some of the other outstanding needs and milestones are additional public financing. We're going to be bringing forward a lease most likely at the next city council meeting for consideration. That is another financial aspect towards supporting and making this project a reality. There's obviously the entitlements that are going to be discussed tonight. There's land acquisition. Again, I mentioned that this is a purchase agreement. Puma Development does not currently own that property. And so that is a milestone that will need to be met. And then securing private financing and other funding sources for the overall project to be met. So that's just kind of a quick recap in terms of where we are in terms of top priorities for redevelopment, where we are in some of the milestones that need to be met for the project. And I'm going to introduce Mark Toon with Puma Development. It's going to give a short recap for those that have not heard yet on sort of what is this project, what is some of that inspiration if you weren't part of some of those town hall meetings. So Mark.
Thank you, Devin. Welcome, Mark.
I agree with the other speaker that said this maybe is not tall enough. But can you hear me okay? Okay. So first of all, I apologize to some of you who've already heard me speak maybe as many as 4 or 5 times. So I'm sure there'll be people who go, well, that's not exactly what you said last time or whatever, but I have no notes. So I'm just telling you the truth. That's where we are. I'm a serial entrepreneur, started companies really since the 80s. I came out of grad school at Baylor and I went to work at Accenture. The day I made partner, I quit. Didn't really want to do that and just started my own firm. And have kind of either started things or run things or ultimately sold things my entire career. And one of the things I did, one of the last companies that I started, I sold to KPMG. It's a large global accounting firm. I really don't belong in a large global accounting firm, but I transitioned 1,100 people to that organization and ultimately stuck around 6 years to transition that business. I ran their global data and analytics business, which meant We took data and turned it into insights for large corporations around the world. And what we did in addition, in the company that I sold, was we helped big companies move into geographies they had never been in before and help them try to figure out what that environment was. How do they negotiate taxes with the different provinces or countries? How did they set up sales infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Retired. Ran a venture capital firm called KPMG Capital. Moved back to Houston, but I'd always lived in Houston since the 80s. And really the venture capital firm I started with a close personal friend called Work America Capital, and we invested in Houston-based companies. That was our charter. So we have a janitorial company. We have software companies. We have a lot of weird stuff. We have esports investments that we've made, things that I know nothing about in some cases. And the only limitation we had was I didn't know anything about medical, didn't know anything about oil and gas. So guess what? We made no investments in any of those categories. One of the investments we made, though, and one of the investments we made was Puma Development, but one of the investments we made was called the Cannon. And how many of you ever heard of the Cannon? Well, there's a handful. The Cannon, the vision really for the Cannon is when I started companies in this Houston area, guess what? There just wasn't any support structure. There wasn't mentors that would help early stage companies. There wasn't any venture capital money at all. And there was very few kind of sharing of information and really helping the startup community grow and grow those companies. And guess what? That's really, for the most part, the entire United States, and the backbone of what we've done across this country is small business. And so the Cannon really was building a community of those small businesses and doing it in a way where they had mentors, they had venture capital money, they had ways of being able to share information back and forth. Okay. And so we went in, did data analytics project, and guess what? We found a handful of places that we really felt like that these cannons should be located. Places where the environment had technology resources, young professionals that were starting companies, and also we projected into the kinds of people that would actually start companies over the next 10 years. We did a project to determine where should we actually locate the first one, and ultimately turned a Stewart and Stevenson manufacturing facility from the 1940s into kind of the main Cannon campus. So we now have over 2,000 members across the Houston community. We have 8 locations. We just signed a deal that you may have seen in the paper recently in Clear Lake. We also have one in Frisco. Starting to develop relationships with other communities, because what they have found is that with these young professionals, if you can give them an environment and a community to grow, guess what? They do. So about, believe it or not, 2.5 years ago, had an opportunity to meet with the University of Houston Sugar Land. The Cannon already has a relationship with the University of Houston, and specifically the Wolf Entrepreneurial School. And really felt like that there was a great demographic in the Sugar Land area for a Cannon. Our first location was actually, we wanted to do it on the University of Houston campus. And longer the short of it is, I just couldn't wait that long. Kind of ironic if you really think about it, since that was nearly 2.5 years ago. But had a friend that introduced me to the owner of the property where the chart house is sitting and where really all the historic buildings of Imperial Sugar exist. And, you know, when you really look at what we're trying to do with the Cannon, I sat back and said, you know, it's pretty interesting if you just think of Imperial and how Sugar Land was really named after Imperial, and how Imperial was, you know, really founded in 1843 and was one of the first incorporated companies in the state of Texas. I was like, oh, that would be really cool if we put a Cannon on that site. So we started the process. I find it, I mean, I realize it's a city, maybe a city term, that we're at ground zero or project zero or step zero. We've spent over 3,000 hours on this project. So if it's step zero, I don't know what step 1 and 2 are going to look like. But we've spent a lot of time, and I don't have all the answers. And some of the numbers you're going to get to a little bit later. I'm going to allow the city staff to talk about those specifics. But I am going to tell you that our inspiration is really that if you look at the demographics of Sugar Land, it has the opportunity, and not just Sugar Land, but the rest of Fort Bend County, it has the opportunity to have huge economic growth from people that are in their 20s, people in their 30s that are technology-related people or startup-related people. And guess what? Right now, they're coming into town. They're coming into Houston. They're leaving Sugar Land. And that may be okay for some people, but at the end of the day, a lot of these people that we've interviewed, they want to be in Sugar Land. So we look at the Cannon as a great opportunity to really grow that economic development aspect of the Sugar Land economy, which is that early stage company. And we're finding in our other locations that what's happening is, some of these companies actually grow and they need more space. As they need more space, they need to hire more employees, and those employees need a place to live. And a lot of those employees are in their 20s. They're single income, no kids, double income, no kids in their 30s. In fact, a very large percentage of them, if you look at our Cannon memberships, that's the demographics that we're going. And so when we looked at the opportunity, specifically, I saw the Char House, and I'm kind of an architectural nut. I'm really big into kind of the history side of this. I saw it like, I would rather try to figure out a way to historically preserve these buildings and do something really cool as opposed to just going out on some flat piece of property and doing the same thing. And so we believe at least the Cannon, the Imperial site, is kind of the perfect opportunity to do what we're trying to do. So that's how we got started in this process. We, without giving you too much detail, we had this property under contract in August of 2021. And in January of 2022, we walked. And we walked for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest reason is we couldn't figure out how it worked financially. We thought the idea was great. We just couldn't make the money work. I had a very big partner. And at the end of the day, we just couldn't figure it out. And we told the city, it's like, listen, we love the project. We love what we're trying to do. We just can't figure out the math. And so about 4 or 5 months later, we re-engaged. I can't remember exactly how that happened, but I think the property owner was very instrumental in making that happen. And we ultimately got together and tried to figure out, okay, how could we actually make this work? We put that back under contract. There's other properties that, besides the initial 19 acres that we've also put under contract, and we have about 40 acres under contract right now. If you look at that particular site, there's about 50 acres there total. And our intention is to try to make all of that part of the development. I already, from an inspiration standpoint, someone probably referenced something that I use, but our architectural inspiration is probably the most important thing to me. I mean, you can ask anyone on my team. I'm kind of a jerk when it comes to detail. And what I mean by that is, like, as we have gone, and I'll talk to you about the Char House in just a minute. But I like going to places and looking at cornices on buildings, ceiling heights, really how the lighting works, how the signage works, what did they do historically, how did they actually take artifacts and incorporate them into the development. And whether it's, Ponce City Market or Avalon in the Atlanta area, or the Pearl in San Antonio, I think is a great example. I mean, the Pearl is about a 40-acre piece of property. It's using the Pearl Brewery as kind of its basis. They decided that the right use fit for the big manufacturing facility was Hotel Emma. How many of you have ever been in Hotel Emma? Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's probably the best hotel in the state of Texas. But if you look at the other things they did, they incorporated other buildings as multifamily. The highest price real estate to rent in all of San Antonio is in the Pearl. And it's primarily people older than me that have sold their homes and are now in a lock and leave where they toss the keys and basically are living in anywhere from an 1,800 to 3,000 square foot apartment right there in the Pearl development. If you look at the restaurants in there and the individual that developed this is Pace Pecani Sauce, the founder of that. He sold his company and had a passion for architecture and decided to go in, and we've done best practice work with the Pearl, and we love that development, and we could certainly see something like that or similar to that in many ways here in Sugar Land. So inspirationally, we look at other things and see what works, what doesn't work, and that's kind of how we're taking our approach to actually doing this project. That would be a problem. So what does that mean? We honestly don't know what it means. We have done a site plan for a 50-acre site. We use TBG, and I have a feeling it won't be the last site plan we do. This TBG, for those who don't know, were the original developers or site planners that was engaged many, many years ago to the entire Imperial Development District, the whole district. We used, believe it or not, we were already using them on a different project. So it was kind of perfect for us to be able to use them to assist us in kind of what the site plan may or may not look like. We had lots of ideas on our own. But when you really look at the basics, we wanted to create a mixed-use development that incorporated commercial, entertainment, retail, residential. Residential includes both own as well as rent. I could talk to you all day about what I think residential means. It was summed up a few minutes ago by the gentleman who I don't know who he is, but the gentleman who was formerly with Johnson. The kinds of residential and multifamily that we would put on that property are the people that are employed by those kinds of companies that sit inside the Cannon. But the Cannon wouldn't be the only renter here. It wouldn't be the only commercial office here. My vision for this, and it's very, very similar to what's happening on our development on Brentmore. We have just as many big companies now as we do small. And the reason is because if you look at Central Business District, and let's just speak specifically about the city of Houston, how many of you go into the city of Houston and work every day? How many go downtown? Okay, how do you like it? Yeah. Central business districts around this country, since COVID especially, have had basically diminished demand. And the reason they've had diminished demand is because people don't want to go there. It's hard enough to get people to actually go to work, period, outside of their homes. But what companies are finding around the United States, and I'm sure probably around the world, is that employee loyalty isn't there, okay? Efficiency isn't there. Effectiveness isn't there. People have to be around the water cooler. They actually have to have a feeling of belonging. And so space is really important to them. But central business districts, I mean, I'm glad I don't own any real estate in downtown Houston or any other central business district for that matter, because they are going to diminish. I'm not going to say that those buildings are going to go away, but companies, we have tenants that I won't name, but large energy companies that are trying to put space closer to where their people live because they have a higher probability of attending, okay? So if you look at our Cannon, we're within 0.8 of a mile of City Center, which is Highway 10 and Beltway 8 on the west side. In that location, we have just as many big company tenants as we do small companies. And there's two reasons. One, they want to have something that's innovative and a cool space and is not in some central business district tower somewhere where they pay $35 for parking every day. Instead, they want it close to their house where they can commute in a shorter period of time and be able to get that same feel. Okay. And in addition to that, innovative space. When you look at the kinds of, specifically, and I think that Chevron would have no problem in me mentioning Chevron, but Chevron has multiple organizations that are around the Cannon, and the reason they have Chevron Technology Ventures, they want to know what's next. We have companies that are starting in the Cannon right now that are growing, and Chevron's making investments in those companies. And so the biggest thing they could do is be next to them. They also have innovation groups and robotics groups and artificial intelligence groups. How well do you think those people like going downtown? So we see more and more big companies trying to be located in smaller geographies closer to their business. And I don't see anything that would say we're not going to be able to do the exact same thing in this particular site. In fact, I know we are. I'm betting on it. I guess a few other things. So therefore that's commercial, right? When you have people that go to offices, you need places to eat, with all due respect to Sugar Land, y'all have some great restaurants, but there's very few great restaurants. You have a lot of what I would describe as, I'll get slapped probably, but suburban chains. That's not any fun. I think we need to, in a place like this, it's not going to be a strip center. There's too much money that's going to be sunk on this property. It's going to be really cool stuff. It's going to be innovative stuff. It might be a place that you've heard that somewhere else in Houston or Dallas or LA or something that they already have a location. But at the end of the day, it has to be a pretty eclectic, creative kind of space. To do that, guess what? The density, we're not going to have 6-story buildings. There's 2 buildings right now that I guarantee you there won't be anything closer than the 2 buildings that already sit on that side. You have to be closer to the ground. Retail is always going to be on the 1st or 2nd story for the most part. We have some exceptions that I'll tell you about in the chart house. But when you look at kind of what we're trying to create, and you look at the green space, somebody a few minutes ago mentioned, if you're going to do this, you're not going to have any green space. To be honest, with my team, they're like, we have way too much green space. And you haven't seen our site plan, but our site plan, without going through specifics, has like 5 acres of grass, tons of trees. I think that compared to other things that I've seen, it's far more green than any development that we've seen really anywhere, and that even includes the Pearl. It's important to us to try to create an environment where we can attract these 20s or 30-somethings, and I know I say that very, very strongly, but guess what? If there's a 20s or 30-something movement to go somewhere, where do I want to be? Where do some of you want to be? You want to be the cool place, right? What has been found around the country is when you develop mixed use for a crowd like that, the people that really take over are older than me, which is kind of ironic. But if you look at the demographics of Sugar Land, it's perfect. So we have to create something cool. We have to provide ample parking. It's got to be easy to get in and out. And guess what? Traffic? Yeah, that's a problem. We've already engaged a traffic consultant. We've already been working with the city on traffic-related issues. Is it solved? No. Am I worried about that? Yeah. Because if traffic is a problem, guess what? You're not coming. Okay? And that is very important to us. So let's talk about the Char House. And here's why I want to talk about the Char House. And, somebody mentioned this a few minutes ago, but have you ever been somewhere where you drive around and there's a restaurant there and then they close? And then you remember, oh, wow, there's been like 19 restaurants there and they all close. Do you ever just kind of wonder why? Yeah, there's usually a really good reason why. And so as I look at specifically this piece of property, we have spent hours and hours trying to determine why things have failed. Okay, there's a lot of different reasons why. For us, the biggest one though, start with the absolute most important thing on that piece of property. And to us, it's not even close. It's the Char House. And then whatever you do not screw it up, right? And I've seen the good news about being the last guy in the room and is that you've seen all the bad ideas, hopefully. And so therefore you kind of go, okay, why was that a bad idea? If I did that now, would it change? Time changes, right? There could be things that happened 15 years ago that might work now, but we've looked at every single one of them. So we've looked at the loft concept. We've looked at the apartment concept. We looked at the hotel concept. At the end of the day, where we've landed is that we believe it would be a great office concept, but not just office. For us, one of the things when we sit back and look at it is like, this has to have a lot of public space. And for the reason is because some of you worked at Imperial, you still want to go in that building, right? If we do lofts where all you can do is go to the elevator bank, how cool is that? Not, right? So we're trying to position this where we have at least two or three places in this building that would be considered public. We can go see it. The building's cool. If you've never been in it, it's got varying height ceilings, which is a major problem. It's got some really cool steel. It's been wrapped with brick. That's really neat. But it's got floors that don't exist. Where equipment basically penetrated the floors. It's got a lot of really neat architectural kind of components, and we want to share that. I mean, we want to make sure that the public can go there without charge and be able to jump in an elevator and go to a floor or go to the roof and see what the building is. And that's important to us. Secondly, you ultimately have to make money on a building, right? We've estimated, and I don't know if we're right or wrong, but I'll tell you where we are in our process in a second, but we believe based on metrics that we've used on other things that this is going to be about a $45 to $50 million endeavor. Not that we have any plans at all of exiting the building or selling the building, but if we did, they have what's called a cap rate, and that's how you value a building. It's based on the net operating income times a cap rate, and that's just how you value that building. In our best case scenario, a cap rate ends up basically breaking even. So if we do a perfect job, we execute perfectly, we break even. That's not overly exciting to investors. And so therefore, when you look at, you probably sit there and go, why is he going through such the pain of sitting in front of multiple town halls, multiple city council meetings, et cetera? I think the benefit long-term is there. Not necessarily to ever do anything other than break even. But as we look at the Char House, we say, okay, we asked for the city for some upfront money to do some design work. The reason is before I ever own the Char House, even though I'll have intentions of buying it, before I ever own it, we will be finished with and permitted. That's our objective. Finished with design and permitted. And in addition to that, know exactly what kind of money we're going to get from the Historical Tax Commission. Because we are basically going to follow exactly what the commission wants us to do to restore that building, and the rules are very, very difficult. There are going to be things we just can't do. The cool news is we're going to restore it to the way that the commission requires it restored. The bad news is it's probably going to cost us a little bit more money. The good news is we're going to get some money back from them when we do that. And when you look at the monies that we're going to get back, that's probably how we make sure that we break even or do better than break even. And that's how we're justifying it. If you look at that as a project on a standalone basis, there's not a single developer in the world that would take this home, period. So we have to go, okay, how do we couple this with other things to figure out how we can make money to make this work, right? More importantly, though, if we're going to build a successful mixed-use development, we have to have retail, we have to have commercial, we have to have residential. We believe we have to have residential both on the owner side as well as on the rental side. And that's why we've proposed what we've proposed, and we've said this from the very, very beginning. Now, as we go through our process and we look at the Char House, most of our focus right now is on Char House. There's some really specific reasons because we've got some time frames we've got to hit. We've asked the city for, I think it was mentioned a few minutes ago, from the very beginning, we went to the city and said, here are like the 5 or 6 things that we need. And I think we've been explicit, we've been explicit, we've been definite, and this is what it's going to take. And by the way, we think it's going to take a whole lot more from somebody else. I'm looking at this as an entrepreneur, not as a real estate developer. To be brutally honest. And so that's probably why And if you look in today, if you're in the financial community or you lend money for real estate projects or you invest in real estate projects, now's not exactly the perfect time to be doing this project. Okay. But I'm just telling you, we've had enough conversations with all the players required to get some of this project done. We're comfortable. That's why we're spending literally, I mean, I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you we've spent over 3,000 hours and ticking. But that's what we do. We're in love with this project to a certain point. We're in love with it until my kids can't go to college. And so that's kind of what the basis is and why we're so passionate about this particular one. I'll tell you a couple of things. So we're working on schematic design right now. We've worked with a lot of architects. The city had actually engaged a historical architect that works on historic buildings. They're Houston-based. It's a couple. Her education's actually from Manhattan, and most of her work has been historical restoration work in Manhattan, Brooklyn, other areas, kind of the New York tri-state area. We really like them. The company's called Urbana. It's public knowledge somewhere. I mean, everything else is. And we really like them. And they're really jerks when it comes to certain things. I'm like, really? I mean, really? Yeah. I mean, so I probably am pushing the envelope, and they're like, no, and from a historical restoration perspective, you have to do this. I'm going to give you an example. Someone talked about the imperial sugar signs on the rooftop. So I will just tell you what will have to be done. So nobody can get mad at me because this is just what has to get done. Allegedly, unless someone can prove to me that I'm wrong, those signs were originally on the east and west side. They will be on the east and west side. So the south side that faces 90, there will not be an imperial sugar sign on that side. I was like, oh, come on. I mean, there's one right there. But there's not even a negotiation. So that's the way we're going to do it, because that's the way it needs to be done to try to restore it to the way that it was. A few other things that we're doing, and Vance works with me. So if you have any questions, you just need to approach Vance after this is over. If you look at any kind of building that has public access, you'll have to have multiple stairwells, right? That building doesn't have any stairwells that are legal. So it's only a 9,000 square foot footprint building. So one of the bad things about it, it's only 9,000 square feet. If we put in the bathrooms that are required, I'm sure from a planning and zoning perspective, we'll go through all of that. But and we put in all the stairwells that are required, et cetera, it takes up a lot of space. So one of the cool things, I think, that from an architectural standpoint, we are going to move one of the stairwells and one of the elevators and the bathrooms in kind of a tower that's on the backside of the tower, and that way it keeps all the windows looking from all the directions, and it doesn't. If you're inside the building, I think it really helps with kind of trying to keep the views and what we're doing from an interior perspective. At this time, our plan is we believe that the first story will be some sort of retail. We are currently in process of engaging retail consultants and brokers on what the part of the possible is. These are, for the most part, all Houston-based related individuals that have a lot of experience in Sugar Land, and that's not the experience we want. We want to understand the consumer in Sugar Land. We don't necessarily want the typical answer that's been here. So we're going to have to slap some people around, to be honest, to get the right products, to get the right concepts. Our current vision, though, is first story is some form of retail and food and beverage, and then kind of a must. The owner of the building currently, we kind of committed that we would put a rooftop bar. We're going to have to make it where you don't jump. And because of the architectural integrity, does anyone know the owner of the building? Okay. Because of the architectural integrity from a view perspective with the Historic Commission, we have to move elements back a little bit from the railing, so that kind of helps. But I mean, it'll be completely safe, but we're actually building what looks like it's going to be somewhere between a 2,000 to 3,000 square foot bar slash it probably has some kind of food service as well up there. We don't have a tenant yet, obviously, but and we'll bring back the silos that were the smokestacks that were actually on top of that roof as well. There's a side conversation going on what we're going to do on the 5th floor. It's one of the coolest floors. It's about 22 feet. And if we can find the right tenant there, we would like to put in a restaurant on the 5th floor. It's all going to be about math. Can we find the right tenant that would be the perfect tenant for Sugar Land that's willing to commit to that building? We think we're going to be able to do it, but to be honest, I don't have any idea. We're also in kind of this phase one doing the engineering building. And for those who don't know which one of the engineering building is, it's about 62 feet from the chart house directly to the west. It's a 2-story building. We believe if you look at our site plans, there's not going to be a road where there's a road now going through there. So we believe that we'll be able to kind of bring that, and it's very treed right now, so we'll keep it that way. Y'all ready for me to stop, aren't you? Okay. See, you give me the floor this time and I'm out there. Hey, listen, here's topics that we don't know the answers. Not all the answers. We know some of the answers. We don't know all the answers. But it's, when you look at preservation of the architectural history, you can see how serious we are about it. I know that the museum have done a great job and warehouses of stuff that are there that we would love to be able to use artifacts. I'll just tell you right now, if you have something you think that would be meaningful for our project, we plan on putting these things in elevator banks and walls, around the campus. So, we would really love to at least see what you have and see if there's a way that we can use it. When you look at, we've already talked about the multifamily. I think on the density front, I think when it's all said and done with, and I think you see the green space and what the designs ultimately will be, one of the things that we're really going to do too is utilize the creek. In all the other drawings we've seen for other developers, they have not really utilized the creek the way we would like to use it. But to do that, someone mentioned, we got to clean it up. We got to make it better. And then right now the traffic study we've just started. And then obviously just from a phasing and a cost perspective, we're early on some of those aspects, but by the time we get started, we won't have the answers for all of those. So.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, and commission. Okay, so we knew that this was a really important project to the community. Obviously, lots and lots of interest, not just the people in the room. And so staff has been working for the last several months to get the word out to the community about the project. There were, including several things, but there's been mention of the couple of town halls that happened back in December, had some really great attendance there. And also we, posted on our normal social media, things like that, and then had some media mention. So people in the community are definitely aware of the project moving forward. We use a tool called Zen City that gives us kind of the sentiment of the community around particular topics. And essentially what we have heard so far is about 70% of that had been positive as a result of the work that was done late last year, about 2% negative and 28% neutral. So I think in general, people are really excited about the potential restoration of the chart house and about potential plans for the area. So I'm going to talk a little bit to get into the nitty gritty some, and then I'm going to hand it off to Lauren to talk even more specifically, but talk about the land use plan. So as you are aware, the land use plan is a component of the city's comprehensive plan, which is really the guide that we use to determine how the city should develop and redevelop. The land use plan did designate this area as a regional activity center. So I do want to make sure that it's clear to everyone that the activity center is larger than the area that Puma is talking about. So the property that they are looking at and that is going to be reviewed with the general development plan that Lauren will show you in a minute is this area kind of in the maroon over here. And then as you can see, the regional activity center in this kind of dashed line goes all the way over here to Imperial Boulevard. It includes the Overture, and the point at Imperial includes Constellation Field. So it's that entire area. It's not just the potential Puma development. Though their plans are preliminary and don't have a lot of detail at this point, what we do have, we do believe is consistent with the vision that was established in the land use plan for regional activity centers, and for this one in particular. They envision a mixed use, compact, walkable, bicycle friendly area that have active public spaces and draw people from around the region. And we really feel like the plans that are in front of us do all of those things. There were some references to some numbers, and so I also want to make sure that we clarify some of that. So each of the regional activity centers has a description in the land use plan, and there are some changes that are necessary to the Imperial Regional Activity Center in order to accommodate the concept plan for this historic area. So one of the changes is an increase in the overall percentage of residential in the Regional Activity Center, which is what you see in the pie chart here. And that includes existing and proposed single family, multifamily, and other medium density residential types. And then it also includes an increase in the number of multifamily units in the Regional Activity Center up to 1,200. So again, that's the entire Regional Activity Center, not just in the historic district area. So it is inclusive of the existing Imperial lofts that are down here. And then it also includes this kind of out tract that is the area that Suba currently owns.
We've got
yes,
Commissioner question.
Quick question for you. That 1,200 number you're referencing, that's an all-in number with the addition. That's not an additional 1,200.
Correct. It's total 1,200. Right. Right. And again, that's for that entire activity center, not just the Puma area. So I believe that the existing Imperial Lofts has 254, and the original final development plan for this area, which included this out tract, that had 274 just for that site. So
that was the Suba site, right?
Correct. So it's about 800 new units, I believe. No, that's not right. 500, 600. Sorry, I should have done that math. Also want to point out that some of those limitations that were originally in place were really before the pandemic, obviously, and the market, things have changed significantly since then. And so
just so we clarify, because
yes.
there's some conversations going on.
Yes.
So the ballpark lofts right now across the Constellation are 254 units.
Yes, sir.
The Suba, which is proposed, is about 274, 76, yes, whatever the number is. So the 1,200 less those two numbers
includes both of those, right?
Is what would be left for the entire Regional Activity Center,
right? Not
just the Imperial site.
True. And that's just and that's for the multifamily units.
Mary, go ahead.
Includes the Overture?
Right. So the Regional Activity Center includes the Overture, but senior living is not classified as multifamily. And so those numbers are not included in those calculations. Yes.
What is the single family number that's allowed then outside of that? Or is that also including the 1,200?
So no, that's just the multifamily. The single family isn't limited in number. It was really just the multifamily that had the limitation in the land use plan. I guess you could say it's not limited, but the percentages in the land use plan are intended to kind of convey the approximate balance of different uses. And so that's really where the single family would come into play, is in that, that residential portion. Also, these are for building square footages. So, we went in and looked at all the existing square footages of the existing buildings and then kind of projected, what might take place and what's remaining. These may change a little bit as we kind of refine the numbers over the next few weeks before we're getting into the public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. But we don't think that they're too far off. So that's. I don't know the acreage of single family off the top of my head. I can look into that though.
So are condos considered multifamily?
Condos, individually owned, would be considered multifamily.
Okay,
Yes.
but I guess none are being considered right now. I really want them to be, I guess, apartments in this particular.
That I don't know for sure. I'd have to ask.
I'm sorry,
developer
I'm
to answer
struggling
that
to
question.
What was it?
Yes, so Councilmember asked if, how condos would be classified, and that would be as multifamily. And I'm not aware if condos are currently being considered for the Imperial Historic Area or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that is all with respect to the land use plan. Yes,
So they
sir.
are all apartments?
Yes.
The 1,200, or I'm sorry, the
All the 1,200 are all apartments?
multifamily. So depending on, yes, that would include condos, that would include, yeah, not townhomes though. Townhomes are individually owned, so that would be considered a single family product.
And the condos would be the purchased ones?
Right, like we have next door. Those are
Well, let's be honest.
individually owned.
Let's talk about condos, because these condos over here, it's an apartment complex that the units are individually owned and leased.
Yeah.
There are not that many people. I happen to know a lot of the owners over there, and they lease them out. It was an investment. So the difference between apartments is you have one entity that owns it and leases it, and the condos that we have over here, you have 275 owners that lease it.
Right.
And a few of them, yeah, and there's people that own multiple units. But the point is that, you know, the condos and apartments, I mean, they more or less function the same.
Right.
It's the ownership that's different.
Right.
So to the person, and I forget Mr. Patterson. That's me. He's referencing ownership. So by that standard, then we're not really increasing any ownership or stake because the condos are going to be rented out. So these are.
Yeah, if you're going to talk about condos, I think you're talking about.
That's all I was trying to.
Yeah.
I was looking at that in that perspective, not
right.
the separation. I was looking for purchase,
right.
Permanent ownership as opposed to rental. I was just wondering what that balance was.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
Sounds like it didn't work that way here. You know,
Under this, under the way that it's being suggested or recommended in the land use plan, it could be either or. Ultimately, I don't know if they have plans right now or if that could end up being condo or rental in the end. But they are, like the mayor said, functionally the same, and they're classified the same under our zoning.
Okay. Got a question. Where are they? I know FEMA has 40 acres under contract. There's 50 acres total. So is the Suba property part of that additional 10 acres, or are they completely outside of the 50 acres total that was referenced?
40 acres does not include the Suba.
Right. I know the 40 acres doesn't, but are they in the 50 acres that Mark referenced earlier, or are they outside the 50 acres that he referenced?
They're outside of the 40.
Are they outside the 50? Okay, so they're inside, they're not in the 40, but they're inside the 50. Okay.
So I'm gonna close out here with a few slides and the next steps, and then we'll open it up. So Ruth talked a little bit about our policy guidance from the comprehensive plan. I'm gonna touch on a little bit of the regulatory components of this. So a general development plan is part of what we call a planned development district. So the intent of a planned development district is to allow for flexible, creative, efficient uses of land, to look at the circulation pattern, creative uses of open space, aesthetic design of buildings, and then take a look at a variety of uses that might be new or innovative for the city. And so a planned development district has two parts, a general development plan and a final development plan. And a general development plan essentially has enough preliminary information to provide the public, as well as the commission and the council, with enough information to make a preliminary decision on the merits of the development, but not a final decision. So that's where we are. It's a general development plan that we're going to talk about this evening. So what we have that was made available online was Exhibit B. That is the text of the document. That's kind of the bones of the regulatory elements of your development regulations. Exhibit B1 is the permitted use list. That's a standard component of any plan development district. So what that does is it does codify the list of uses. So that way we can be able to be sure we know some of the uses that will be on site. So touching on some of that, the main components of the general development plan will be residential, multifamily, and commercial development with structured parking and some elements of shared parking ability. The residential options, we've been discussing them, will include maximum 660 multifamily units in this general development plan, as well as some more dense housing options, more dense than your standard single family. So the townhomes, duplex, patio, urban homes, some of the things Ruth touched on that we talked about in the land use plan. And then the commercial uses. So the exhibit as part of the general development plan ordinance includes a pretty good variety of uses. So office, retail, services, restaurants, hotels, and then some entertainment too. So we've got some commercial amusement entertainment in there, bars, wine bars, anything like that is also on there. And then services can run a variety of what you see, you know, professional services, medical, bank. It's
Lauren, before you leave that
yes, sir.
slide. So what's this general development plan is specific to Imperial, which is what we're talking about here. It does not have anything to do with the land use plan. Doesn't have anything to do with the regional activity stuff.
That's correct.
It has to do with what we're talking about with FEMA development, correct?
That is correct. So the general development plan is the regulatory document. It is the ordinance that ultimately the commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, will take action and make a recommendation to the city council on. That is ultimately what becomes the ordinance governing the lands.
So the question for the folks that were asking about the apartments. So is 660 additional multifamily units over and above what was done. I was involved as the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission way back when the deal was cut in early 2000, which included 626. There were 300 near the ballpark. There were 254 of those that were built. There were 326 on the historic side. That was this side. And that 326 is now 660. Is what's being proposed to make this work. So you've got an additional 660 units that would be part of this development. And in order to make this general development plan and this development work.
Mayor, you're looking straight at me. You won't cause me to have to use math.
No. I'm not needed to look right at you. I'm
between Ulrich Drive and the creek. You're now proposing 946 apartments.
Well,
that's the number that has to be.
No, actually, they're on this side, and then the creek's here, and then they're on the other side. So they're split.
No, I'm making sure the city council knows that the Suba development
is 274 units. Lauren, if you have a pointer, point to where the 274, 276 units is.
Right there, and that's all on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all.
The creek is on the right. Mm-hmm. Right now, you're being asked to approve 946 units in that spot.
Not
No.
So great. I'll talk about the concept layout plan.
So yeah, why don't you go?
Sure. So this is the conceptual layout plan. It will be included as part of the general development plan ordinance. So the land use legend, the red is commercial areas. Yellow is residential. Now that includes all the residential. So the multifamily, the townhomes, the duplex, the patio homes, all of it is in these yellow areas here. So it can be in it's not just right here, which I think was the discussion we were just having. So it's all here too.
So James, the 660, those two. So what's labeled up there, I can barely read it, but it says Outtrack. That's Suba because that's a separate owner.
264 units.
Or 270 something units.
Mm-hmm.
And then that green parcel to the north and the green parcel to the east would make up the balance of that 660.
So my mistake is I'm saying that the creek is the boundary on the east side. Now, Wood Street's the boundary on the east side.
That's correct. And there is another part that Mark has under contract, and I'm not sure where that is. It's not part of this.
Public parking, surface parking, or is it parking garage? Can I ask that now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so right now the parking is structured, the way the general development plan reads is that the structured parking will serve the residential and that there are opportunities for doing shared parking as well as structured parking. So it's not a definitive answer yet, but it will include a little bit of both.
Do you know how many public parking spaces for non-residents will be available?
You're not going to know that until you program those buildings.
Yeah.
We had multifamily with parking included inside the units. Are we going to do that on this development?
A wrap?
Yes. Are we doing wraps?
Probably. That's typical. That's a typical look for a mixed use, more walkable.
Which leaves that parking
area
open. Sort of.
Potentially.
Okay.
Where's the museum?
Sure, great question. Yep, so the stripes here, so this is the Char House, the engineering building, the 3-bay warehouse, and then the 4-bin, the Children's Museum, and the silo. Good question.
Lord, in the planning right now for the residential, I guess we're at the point right now that it's such high level. We sort of know the counts, but we really don't know if it would be some kind of work live like what we were talking about before and how that would mix with condo apartments. We just know that will be residential. Is that correct?
Right. Inclusive of multifamily and townhomes or any other type of.
So when it would come to P&Z first, this would just be the high level plan and then it would come back as the final plan as to what that.
Right. So the general development plan will provides the high level preliminary overview of the site. And then it sets out, and that's kind of some of what I was saying in this other slide, is it provides the shaping and the guiding regulations for the future development plans. And that's written pretty extensively in the Exhibit B document to be the guide for future.
Yes. A lot of conversations around your interest in history. What kinds of historical redevelopment have you done in the past?
Other than the Britmore location that I described, which was in the manufacturing facility, that is it. That being said,
I mean, from both an architecture as well as from a general contractor perspective, we're engaging people that have done this all the time.
You go back to the land plan. So I think one time years back, one of the developers had the parking garage against the park. And they brought in a plan. We had like these architectural panels, so we didn't disrupt the look or the feel of the park from that. That if you're putting apartments there, what are your plans to keep the feel of the neighborhood behind it and not disrupt it and see? And let me ask, do you know how many stories? Any offhand, just a guess?
Most likely it's 4-ish.
4-ish. So having that big building there, do you have plans to? And maybe it's too early, but I'm just.
It's way too early. We're working on the site plan now. I can't sit here and tell you that I even think a multifamily will brought up to the park. I mean, I think that it's more logical to have residential that would be brought up to the park versus multifamily.
One comment. Over here, man. Yeah, so going back to what Mark said earlier, Mark, you were presenting regarding the Char House only when you used the number potentially 45 to 50 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the reason I ask is when you look at that overall project and that one little spot is 45 to 50 million dollar investment, that's considerable to one little spot on that map. This is going to be a sizable project over the years, potentially.
Yes. It's over $1 billion.
That's what, thank you.
So that was the main kind of touch points we wanted to have on the general development plan. We have another slide for next steps and then open it up.
I got a question. So I got a call from somebody today and they said that I guess in the original development plan, I don't know if it's SUBA or I don't know which part it was. So they said that no apartments can be started until ground has broken on, I guess, the non-residential uses. Is that still a part of this? Is that a part of this?
That was the original development plan. That is not part of this development plan. And what the original development plan, which was another developer, quite frankly, and the prohibition was the apartments couldn't be built to 130,000 square feet of office had been put in place. Okay. The developer's gone.
Okay, so that provision's out now. Okay.
Well, what's going to happen is that original plan developed, that original PD is now going to be replaced by a new PD, a revised PD. It's a two-step process, which is what they're telling you. So we've got the general plan,
right,
and then I forget what they call it, but a specific plan. But it's a two-step process that goes through P&Z and City Council.
Right. Okay. And so to get to the 1,200, which is the changes that you'll be asking P&Z to make on the, I guess, recommend on the February 14th, you basically took the 254 for the lofts and the 274 for SUBA, and then added the 660 for the historic district, and then had a little round up to 1,200. So that's where that number came from. That's okay.
I just wanted to add to what the mayor said, that question about the limitation on when the apartments can be built, that is in a development agreement, and it was very specific to the former Imperial Market project. And so that development agreement will need to be amended because it was very specific to the square footages and types of development specific to Imperial Market, which is the project is no longer. So those updates will need to be made to the development agreement, which is separate from this general development plan amendment.
Okay.
Matt, no, you go ahead.
Okay. I got a bunch of calls today, but one of the calls I asked, are children going to be allowed in the multifamily? I guess something from the town hall meeting that said it was going to be targeting young professionals and elderly, and they said, are children going to be allowed or not allowed? And I don't think you can do an age restriction.
No, it's separate areas. But no.
So I mean, and I was like, I wasn't there, so I don't know. I know the goal is for young professionals and stuff. It is going to be restricted for no.
I don't know where they says in here up to 3 bedrooms. I'm assuming.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't think.
We have had 0 discussions.
Okay, I didn't know where they got that from.
One of the products we really like that's
off the rack. That's not off what this is.
Oh, this is the PD.
So that's not PD.
To answer your question.
Oh.
To answer your question, we haven't had any discussions about that at all. I think when you look at
the larger units, what we've really done is, as I said, been best practicing. If you look at a product called the Cellar in the Pearl, we've done a best practice related to that. There are no kids in that particular unit, to my knowledge. Most of those are people that are empty nesters. And so, but they're getting that, they're still going ahead and moving from their X thousand square foot home into those units. So, it's not, if you look at the kinds of people we're targeting, we're really not targeting families with kids at all. But we've never said that. We've never put a restriction on any of it to say that.
That's probably where the confusion came in, probably targeting people without it. But I was thinking, well, certainly kids would be allowed if they wanted to. And I guess I heard someone also mention the 6 stories in one of the public comments. So I know you're looking to add language of maximum height of no building should be no more than 6 stories. But I know we're indicating that maybe most of it's going to be like even 3 or 4 stories and stuff. So I was just had a question about that. So,
Right, yeah, I think it depends. I mean, I know there's a provision in there saying they won't be taller than the char house, so those will be some of that historic preservation element that'll come into play as well with, when they start designing some of the buildings. So, something they're there yet as far as heights of buildings.
Okay, so if that provision wasn't in there, they could be taller than 6 stories?
In the char house, if it wasn't, that's why.
That's what I'm saying, in the draft changes you're proposing, if that language isn't added.
Not in the land use plan, it's gonna be in the ordinance, in the general
it's gonna be in the
development.
ordinance,
Yeah,
not
it's gonna be in the zoning document versus the more, policy document of the comprehensive plan, yes.
But they couldn't, you're putting in there that they can't have a building
Taller
higher than the char
char
house, but they could have a building as tall as a char house, meaning an apartment structure as tall as a char house.
I'll just go by that.
Not taller.
I'm reading the past. Oh, yeah, well, I've got that one too.
So I'll go to the next slide, and we're having a lot of conversation, and that's great. We can open it up to that. So just next steps, both the land use plan amendment and this plan development, general development, the rezoning, will move to the Planning and Zoning Commission for public hearing, as well as their consideration and action, the recommendation on February 14th. The following week, we will hold, City Council will hold the public hearing and the first reading of the ordinance February 21st. And then following that, if it moves forward, the second reading of the ordinance on March 7th, 2023. So that's.
Matt had a question.
Oh,
Matt?
so sorry.
I should have asked it earlier, and I apologize for not doing that because it pertains to the RAC and not the PD.
That's okay.
So in the RAC, we're going to see something that's proposing to increase the number of family units to 1,200. What's the current number?
526. It's 526.
526. It's 526.
526, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And along that same line, follow-up mass question. So I know we've got a 12% limit of multifamily. So you'd have that one apartment to about every 7 single family homes. So adding the 660, that still keeps us below the 12%.
Right. So we were taking, the whole ratio of single family to multifamily is definitely still a part of the land use plan.
And we're still below 12% with this addition. Okay.
And to follow up, Matt's question, we're increasing 5 something, but what are we increasing over? There was something planned previously. And so many units in that.
That's this out parcel that's been referenced, and it was approved for 274. But
there was another development there previous, or was that the apartment?
That was the apartment that's part of the Imperial Market,
which was part of it. The last time we saw it?
28-30 acres, yes.
Okay.
Back many years ago, yes.
So we are adding an additional 527 on top of the SUVA that was planned for this area, for 600.
Right now
I know there's a lot of numbers, and I'm trying to, because I remember the last time it came up, and those were the apartments. Okay.
Yes. Okay. That's all.
Answer your question.
No, I think the questions about the numbers are good because we should all leave this meeting with an accurate sense of what the numbers are. So I think this is a helpful discussion. But I want to also want to be clear, and I guess I'll do this in the form of a question, and that is what's being proposed is not an increase in, as what we've heard from some of the comments. It's not an increase. It's not 900 more multifamily. It's what's being asked for in the PD is going to be an increase in the cap on multifamily units in the entire regional activity center from the number now 526 to 1,200. Okay, that's the increase, and that increase is for the entire RAC.
This entire area.
Which encompasses much more than what is being discussed.
Correct.
With respect to the PD.
Correct, and includes the existing multifamily, the Imperial Lofts.
So through that whole space that we see out in purple and outlined in purple, can you just draw around that so everyone can see it?
Sure, right here.
So the cap applies to everything in that entire space, not just the area. And could you show where just the PD is that is under consideration?
So that's the general development plan that's going through the process this month is this acreage in purple. That is the 660 units.
Okay.
The overall regional activity center is all of this which is the 1,200. That includes the Imperial Lofts.
And 528 existing units that are already there.
No.
Right? 254
254.
plus 274 I heard from Savak.
It's proposed.
Okay.
There's only 254 units built right now.
Okay.
Right.
And the other proposed.
And the 274, 76 is proposed right now. It's being held up because of what Devin referenced. The development agreement in place which required 130,000 square feet office space to be built and on the ground operating before they ever built the apartment.
Okay. Thank you.
Stuart.
Lauren, it's been mentioned to me that we are disregarding the 2018 land use plan specifically because it doesn't apply when council wants to do something. And that's a paraphrasing. How does this increase square with the 2018 land use plan?
The increase, you're welcome to come up. But I think Ruth will touch on some of this, is that we believe this is in alignment with the goals that were established in regional activity. So walkable, bike-friendly, pedestrian-friendly, active public spaces, drawing people, having the residential components. Those were all things that were planned to be in the 2018. They were in the 2018. And we believe they're being carried out here as well.
Okay, thank you.
And more to that, if you want.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I would say. The only thing I would add is at the time we didn't necessarily have a good understanding of what it would take to see this redevelopment actually happen. And I think that is really what's in front of us now is more of an understanding and a reality, kind of a reality check to see this really important structure in our community preserved.
So this is actually fulfilling on the 2018 land use plan. It's not doing violence to it. It's actually fulfilling on it.
We would say so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So are the Suba apartments what is taking away why you have to add so many more in that area to make it economically viable because you don't have those apartments that were in the original plan?
I wouldn't say they're taking away. I would say that if you look at an effective mixed-use development where we're talking about the amount of commercial and retail that we think we will need, we land in basically about a 900-ish, 930 unit kind of range. So we're just including the 660 in addition to what's already been approved many, many years ago in that space.
William. Did you get an answer?
Yeah, I'm just trying. What did we have 267 though before in the other plan, right? That made it work for that space. I just wonder what the difference is. Why we need so many more this time?
The regional activity center?
No, for the development to occur.
Well, I don't remember the development didn't occur.
Yeah,
it didn't make it work.
Well, no, they progressed it certainly. Yeah, right. Yes, to be fair, it
yeah. In the environment we have now, there's no way you could do 130,000 square feet office space. It wouldn't work.
We cannot come.
Oh, right. No, I'm not talking about the office.
But that's what made it work. That's what made Lester's apartments work. Was you had to take, the development got taken up by the 130,000 square feet office.
Yeah, I mean, that's a past project that didn't get built. And I think one point that I just want to emphasize is that was also before a pandemic that has altered market drivers and realities of how mixed use that had a lot.
5 years from now, something else could happen and change.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't like
We're talking about right now trying to make something happen. And that was very heavily retailed, and that's not something that would make this project pencil right now.
Bottom line, it couldn't get financed. William.
Hey, that's me. Thank you, Tim. Since we're talking about the apartments and the impact on the project, I'm just dying to know, because I do not live across the street from Constellation Field. What has been the impact of that complex on crime in the Constellation Field area? I don't live there, so I'm asking. I have no idea. Positive, negative?
So I can speak to a little bit. We talked to our police department when we were working on the district at Sugar Creek project, and They provided us with statistics, crime statistics, that in each of the surrounding single-family areas surrounding Telfair Lofts, Imperial Lofts, our First Colony apartments, there was no seen market difference of crime from before the apartments to after the apartments. We had that discussion with Chief Allen. So she could be the expert witness here, but yeah, we had that.
Chief Allen, there we go. Thank you, Michelle.
I ran over here. Real so far it is over there. But yes, thank you. In preparation for these kind of conversations, we did conduct an analysis. And what we found, I'll give you an example here because this is the best one that I can recall. So one of the last ones that was built was the Telfair Lofts. So I don't remember the number of apartments they have there.
317.
Okay, thank you. So we looked at, okay, if there's 317 apartments there, we got 317 rooftops in Telfair that's adjacent to it. We compared the crime stats. How many crimes were reported in the apartment complex area? How many crimes were reported in the residential 317 rooftop area? What we found is there's no significant difference in the crime reporting. So that's good news. We're not seeing that the apartment complex has any kind of driving effect on our crime statistics. Yes.
I know who you are, but would you mind introducing yourself? Who said that?
Yeah. Michelle Allen, Assistant Police Chief. Hi.
Thank you.
And Michelle, you're in charge of operations.
Actually, support services.
So did you compare those crime statistics to citywide overall when apartments are added? Just in case the crimes aren't occurring in the apartment complex, but somewhere else in the city at a business or something else. What are the crime statistics? And maybe you don't have that metric. I don't know.
Michelle, I think the highest crime statistics are in the mall.
But has it gone up since apartments have added, not just around the apartments, but in the city? I think.
How would you exclude that from other populations?
How would you trace difference?
How would you trace it to apartments? It's just more people, right?
More people.
Well, right. More people, higher density, more people, more crime. Maybe not in that apartment. That's what I'm trying to.
Not think to the type.
But even when we have like festival events where we have thousands of people that come in for that time period, let's say if there's a weekend where there's a festival event where there's 20,000 people that are coming in, you can't really draw conclusions that because there's apartment complexes or others in the area that it's adjacent to it that it runs it. So maybe I'm not understanding your question. If you want to rephrase and ask it a different way.
Do
Yes,
we
ma'am.
find that most of our crime comes from out of town people are in town?
I can't say that we really judge the characteristics of all of our crimes based on, and obviously a lot of times we don't know because we don't make the arrest. But I can say that in instances of person on person crimes where we do make an arrest, we do see that oftentimes they are from out of town.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Good, thank you.
Right.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Lauren, by the time this comes back up, we'll have the traffic impact analysis.
Yeah, this one. So go ahead. Yeah.
Will we have the traffic impact studies done by the time we get this back in February?
So we won't, we're not at that point yet. Yeah, we'll have those certainly for the final development plans, and as Ruben and Mark and his team get further along in the design uses and street layouts and all of that, they'll have more of that information. Yeah.
And then just a couple of comments. I think just a suggestion based upon what I'm hearing, by the time we get it, it would be great to see like just the numbers clearly laid out in terms of the before, after proposed, what's included in what. And I guess to me, the other thing as a resident and just someone on the commission is the why. Like, why did we need to increase? What's the financial impact? I know it's feasible to do it. You have to have a certain number of units and density to make it financially feasible. But just be able to talk through that and market that and discuss it and kind of talk about the business case. Because at the end of the day, that's the number one driver of this. One of the biggest drivers is to not just preserve the history and make sure that we have a destination for people to come and work and live, but also why the numbers have to make sense for us to add, if that's in the proposal, to add more density in terms of living. And so just spelling that out and talking about jobs and just impact from a metrics perspective would be great.
On the for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes, ma'am.
I think Devin has some good slides that she used.
Oh,
some of the
I know she
town
does.
halls
I know she
that,
does.
are very good.
And I'd like to see when it comes before us also how people not living there are going to have access to the amenities. That's why I was asking about the parking garage, because honestly, I look at what also the citizens that live here, you know, the 20-year residents that are sitting behind me, what benefit is bringing to them? Not just the 1,000 apartments that are going to walk to it. You know, as a 20-year resident myself, you know, these people have paid taxes for 20 years in this city. And I don't want it to seem like we're planning for residents that don't, I mean, there's no 20-year-olds in this room right now, you know? So, you know, I want to see well, and I moved here as a young 30-year-old too. So, you know, he's not a resident. So, you know, I think there's some value to that. So just show us how you're going to impact the use for existing residents.
Good. Thank you, Lauren. Matt, do you have any closing comments?
I don't. I'd like to thank everyone for the presentations this evening. I think it was all very, very helpful. I believe we're all going to leave tonight, at least with agreement on what the numbers are involved in the project. And I think that's a success. So everyone has a duty to correct any misinformation on social media. But I think the presentations were great. I think this will really, really inform the discussions that we'll have at the P&Z level. So I'd like to thank everyone for their time and planning and participation. Thank you.
Yeah, and what I'd like to say in closing, and this is directed at the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council, and our residents. We've got a chance to actually take a pretty bold step. Council has invested to date about pretty close to, by the time we're all said and done, probably around $10 million to make this happen. And we've been here a number of times before, and it hasn't worked. And I would tell you, coming from a development background, I think we have a unique opportunity with Mark. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but we've got a unique opportunity to preserve the Char House and come away with a mixed-use development that I think is going to be something we can be proud of. But if we, the council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the public, because it's the public, it's not us. If we can't agree, then I think it's time to let Mark know so he can walk away and go do something else. And we've invested an enormous amount of city resources and time in making this, trying to make this deal happen because we believe that's what the public wanted. But if it's not, we need to know that. So, and I don't mean a minority of the public. I mean a majority of the public. I don't do special interest. We don't do it, this council, at the Planning and Zoning Commission. We don't do special interest. We do what's best for the majority of the citizens of Sugarland. So if it's something that we can't get on board with, let's figure it out now so that we don't spend any more time. Like I said, we did a retreat in the fall, and the number one goal of this city council going forward, the reason we've committed the resources, was to get this deal done in the Char House. Thank y'all. Matt, thanks to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I know this is over and above for you guys, for all of you as members. We really appreciate you guys coming in. We appreciate the insight, the thoughtful questions. You don't have to stay for the rest of this.
Well, Mayor, if I may, we're prepared to adjourn planning and zoning. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? I've got a motion from Commissioner Brown. Is there a second? I've got a second for Commissioner Smith. We are adjourned. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Can I take a recess?
Yeah, we'll take about a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
I got it. What's your guys' name?
Scott, are you still on? Hey, Scott, will you turn your camera on?
Hey, Scott, will you do me a favor? Turn your camera on again? Thank you, sir.
We're going to reconvene. Item number 2, the workshop. 2A, review of and discussion of proposed development agreement with Sci-Fi Networks for a fiber optic network throughout the city. We've got Dr. Stubing, our Director of Special Projects, Steve Budney, our Director of Information and Technology, and Scott Bradshaw, our President of Sci-Fi Networks. Scott Bell's on the scene.
Actually,
oh, there he is. He's
online. So, Scott, can you hear us?
Hey, Scott.
They thought they were getting.
Yes, I can.
That's right. They thought they were going to get out early.
Scott, you got us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine, Scott.
Great.
It's a little low. Can we turn the volume up just a little bit for Scott? Well, we'll get started real quick, Mayor. Good evening. And man, you got me on that one. But we went from talking about the past. We're going to talk about where the city goes the next 20 to 30 years, if not more.
There we go.
So we'll get this turned up a little bit. Thank you, sir.
Scott, will you give me a mic check, please?
Yep. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, he can't hear.
We promise to go quick.
We're going to hold you to that.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm going to take the high road here and turn it over to Steve and Scott and let them do most of the heavy lifting. But about a year ago, we were approached by Sci-Fi kind of out of the blue of, hey, we got a great idea for you and stuff. It's so great it sounded too good to be true. So we started having some conversations with Sean Parker with Sci-Fi and then really sat down with Scott, who as the president and stuff in September timeframe and really started diving into the agreement. There's an associated agreement that we'll talk a little bit about at the end of the Smart Cities Agreement, which is really the city's use of their network and moving this thing forward to really expand our functionality and connectivity and stuff of all of the assets across the city. So in the IT group, we did a communication study probably 2 years ago and came to the realization that it's going to be very expensive if we wanted to build our own fiber network and stuff throughout the city to protect our assets. We were looking at plans, grant funding, everything, and how to start doing that and looking at that and potentially bringing that item back to council. In comes Sci-Fi knocking on our door saying, hey, here's an opportunity. We've done this in several cities across the country. Arlington and Odessa are 2 in the state of Texas that they're working on in right now. So we started working with Sean and with Scott and their team moving forward to kind of get this agreement brought to you. So tonight we've kind of gone through the introduction. Steve's going to hit on kind of community and city needs. We'll turn it to Scott to talk about Sci-Fi and kind of introduce Sci-Fi to the council. Let y'all have any questions there. And we'll talk high level on the network agreement. The goal is to get questions answered tonight. Anything else we need to bring back forward to y'all and then hopefully hit February 7th agenda for approval of this as well as the Smart Cities Agreement. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome, Steve.
Good evening, council. There. I'll try to keep this relatively quick. This is just basically a quick introduction, maybe the problem statement if you want to look at it that way. The city of Sugar Land currently has limited choice and accessibility when it comes to, with regard to high-speed broadband internet. The city has identified fiber optic connectivity to all critical infrastructure as a priority as per the plan that Chris referenced. And Sci-Fi has a network solution that addresses both of these items. So from a community needs perspective, we feel the city, our residents, our businesses, our visitors desire to have wide, high-speed broadband internet access. We have pretty good coverage when it comes to broadband, but not all broadband is created equal. So really the desire is to have fiber optics on this. There are the desire for multiple providers and a variety of service options is something we think would be desirable. Right now we've got limited choice. And in the marketplace, we believe competition will help reduce costs and improve services. So from a city needs perspective, we've identified that we need a high-speed fiber optic network to connect all city critical infrastructure. We had a communications master plan that we put together last year. For us to build this out ourselves, we estimate it's a $10 million build and about a $2 million run rate over 20 years. So it's expensive. It's prohibitive, really expensive for us to do it ourselves. We also, from a city operations perspective, desire a lot of control and flexibility in our network because right now we're dependent entirely on what the vendor provides with limited endpoint, and it's cost prohibitive to stick with our current setup from our provider we're today. We're looking for cost-effective room for usage and growth, and then more importantly, it's future-proof. How do we make sure that we have the ability to adopt technical changes as needs, environments, and industries change? So we don't know what the future looks like. And the idea here is to put something in place that allows us to take advantage of any technological changes that occur over time. And we know they're going to be there. And so this is our future proofing for the city. And with that, I will turn it over to Scott, and I will drive for him. So Scott, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I can. So, council members, I do appreciate your time. And all the last couple of hours have been heavy lifting. So I will try to keep it as light as possible for you. But as I just go through some series of slides really to articulate who my organisation is and our keen interest in your great community, do feel free to ask any particular question at any granular level that suits yourself. I want to make sure all questions are answered for you. So just starting with the beginning, Sci-Fi Networks. So Sci-Fi is a developer. We're very much pioneering the delivery of citywide open access fiber optic networks across the country, specifically in underserved community, and we're delivering those through our Fiber City brand. We focus specifically on the last mile connectivity that closes the digital divide with fiber optic infrastructure that is very much sustainably built for long-term reliability and diversity, as it literally is passing every single premise, business, church, community centre and municipal location throughout each city that we're investing in to date. Our Sci-Fi and our Fiber City networks are financially backed by one of the world's largest pension funds. That particular organisation manages to date just over $600 billion US. And Sci-Fi partner directly with cities who wish to attract and drive economic development that really supports the growth and vitality of their community through such large-scale investment and very much next-generation infrastructure. And having watched your community really for some time now, that's why I do mention that we are keen to work with you. And this is an investment which is very much a 100% private investment with zero cost to the city, to your attention, because I believe the timing is very right. So as we move on to the next slide, what very much is a Fiber City? So a Fiber City is, I'm just going to switch screen because I just switched here, so bear with me as I just do this. Do apologize. There we go. So if you just go to the next slide, please.
I am working on it.
Okay, you tell me when you're good to go. There we go. Bingo. Okay, so what is a Fiber City? It is citywide. We're very clear in our ethos. We do not leave anyone behind. We actually look to connect every single premise within that community. It is a 100% private investment, as I just said moments ago. That private investment backed by one of the largest pension funds in the world. We do not use any government stimulus, whether that be local, county, state, or at the federal level. We don't believe in using taxpayer dollars to fund our private infrastructure that we own. The infrastructure is open access. Sci-Fi does not provide service to the public over this. We are more, we're going to build it, we'll pay for it, we'll build it, we'll maintain it, we'll upgrade it, but we work in a wholesale environment that we wholesale access to as many different internet service providers or Internet of Things companies who really wish to use this to bring a lot of quality, great customer service and value to the community. And we do that what's called over and open access architecture. Our networks are very different to most in that every right now is the buzzwords industry is chasing gigabit infrastructure. That's 1 gigabit. Sci-Fi's infrastructure is 10 gigabit to the resident on day one, 100 gig to businesses, 100 gigabit to the municipality. This is very much whoever receives a Fiber City investment puts themselves on a pedestal compared to their surrounding neighbors. And really this is about retaining not only the people today, but the generations coming rather than them moving out to the larger cities that have far superior infrastructure than what you currently do have. Infrastructure on that point is it's designed for the future. We're building this really with the next 100 years in mind. So with that being said, we design it in a manner that's highly redundant, is resilient, diverse. So you would actively have to go out and break the infrastructure in multiple locations simultaneously to really bring our infrastructure down. Next slide, please. But how do we build it? So we were all about minimal disruption, the least invasive technology, and the minimal disruption being to the community itself. So we actually use what's called microtrenching, and this is an infrastructure that goes between 1 and 2 inches wide, and actually goes 12 inches deep. And the reason we actually use this technology is with all the cities that we're working across, actually 10 different states right now, 37 different cities, well over 100 million feet of construction, which is equal to about 24,000 miles or so of delivery. Is the one thing that we continuously heard was we are tired of our utilities being hit with underground construction. Is there a different alternate method? To which we actually then brought to their attention the microtrenching. It's quick. Each of our crews, per single crew, averages about 2,000 feet per day. That means cut, the infrastructure placed in the ground, and the trench resealed. Now, whether that be in the dirt, in the softscape, as you can see, which is more applicable to your community, or in other cities where we actually do that in the roadway, where the actual road meets the curb, but you don't necessarily have to climb it for that, based on the composition of your roads. We actually do have, we were awarded the ISO 9001 certification, and that's just an international standard. To give you an idea, we are a company all about the quality of what we do, the delivery, the management, the design, the installation, really from start to finish on that. What you can see on the screen is onto the left is those little drums sat on the machine that we roll down the street. That's actually the infrastructure that goes in the ground. And I don't know if you can see my screen, but just give you a simple example. You can see both, but if you can, what I'm showing you in front of you here is actually the size of the microducts. And if I put my little pinky next to it, you'll see it's actually smaller than my small finger. That's the size of the cable that's actually going dedicated to every single premise that wishes to receive it. And just to be very clear, we guarantee to pass every premise, but we don't force this on someone. So if someone in the community does not wish to receive our fiber optic infrastructure, then that is perfectly fine on day one. But if for several years down the line they do wish to receive that connectivity, we will happily come back and actually connect that premise with fiber optic duct. So this is really about presenting the community with an opportunity and not forcing it upon them. The next slide, please. So the immediate benefits to the city, it is the best in class infrastructure. It is citywide. It very much enables economic growth, smart city initiatives from first responders to, securing environment, putting those first responders services onto the network, connecting all municipal facilities, traffic signals. We actually allow you to control your own environment. So from a municipal perspective, we actually can take fiber to every municipal location you desire, and then we allow you to control your own quality of service, the electronics that you put on the end of that. So ultimately, though we're paying for it, we're looking after it and managing it, and it's our infrastructure. From a usage perspective to the municipality, it'll actually feel and look like it's your own. And once again, this is a zero cost to municipality. This is a private investment. We do not wish to use any taxpayer dollars to do this, which is often going, as Chris was saying earlier, going back to the point of why it sounds too good to be true. And reality is, if you break it down to the beginning, I'm taking a large sum of money, and that sum of money for your community is well over $100 million like you to allow us to invest in your community. We take that large sum of money, we spread it for the longest period of time. And to achieve that, you need large scale partners, such as the pension fund we have, because it takes a long time to amortize that, with a view where we wholesale the infrastructure at such a low rate to ISPs that they are able to come in and bring these premium fast next generation services for equal to or less price than what the residents and businesses are paying today. We're all about local employment. So during actual construction, we employ local people to help build this infrastructure. And the reason we do that is once the actual citywide infrastructure is built, which is what we aim to have it built within 24 to 36 months, that being the entire city, those people we have trained, we then actually keep and we pay those individual salaries for every year that you allow us to be within your right-of-way. So if we're in your right-of-way for the next 30 years, we have those local people with very long-term jobs, because we are very much about the long-term game and not just jumping in and out of the city. Next slide, please. The community benefits, there's a plethora of these, and we just try to keep them very simple. They will have premium high-speed gigabit internet, 1 gigabit symmetrical being the same speed being downloaded is the same speed going upload. And we really saw through the pandemic that was an absolute necessity when children actually having to stay at home and trying to do virtual meetings, individuals that work for medical centers, that work for architects, people that use high capacity data throughout the day. needing that type of symmetrical bandwidth, and unfortunately not have it in your case, sadly, where you have asymmetric, where being the download is different to your upload. Everybody's going to get equal access to the infrastructure. They can actually choose which ISPs are on the network. Anyone can choose whichever ISP they wish or whatever service they wish. We are all about supporting the disadvantaged families. Now, I know that in your instance, the poverty level is a lot lower than the average, it must be said. There is still an element of people within your community that are disadvantaged and don't have necessarily the same disposable income that other people do. And Sci-Fi is really all about connecting everyone and supporting everyone. So therefore, Sci-Fi actually has a product which we'll come on to shortly, which is called Fiber City Aid. And that really is one where Sci-Fi looks to subsidize the cost of broadband connectivity to those families. But the great uplift there is we ask you as the elected officials, as the city staff, to choose the qualifying parameters. We'll subsidize it, but you know your people better than us. So we'd like you to choose who you feel qualifies for that with best intentions. Next slide, please. And as I say, this is real, and I know I overtalked this just a second ago, but this is really is very unique to Sci-Fi. This is independent of all government programs. This is very specific to Sci-Fi. You can actually use our Fiber City Aid program in combination with the current federal stimulus products at this time. Next slide, please. I always feel this goes away, because you could listen to my dulcet tones, but, a picture does speak 1,000 words. And as you can see, we actually started in California, and we now have a very heavy footprint within California. We've now begun to spread more so from the west to the east coast with multiple agreements from large cities like Mesa, Arizona to Arlington, to Odessa, and all the way through to New England, and recently, probably 2 weeks ago, down into the state of Florida. So we're very much beginning to offer the Fiber City investment to many, many cities. Next slide. Oh, and just to give you an example, that's 2 million actual premises, population-wise, once all connected, those just to date will be serving over 3.5 million people. Thank you. This is just a range of service providers. The reason I show this slide is, as I said at the beginning, Wi-Fi does not engage with the public on a service level. We bring the infrastructure, that ubiquitous footprint, to the community. We open that infrastructure to a range of different people, but we just don't want fly-by-nights. Whoever qualifies to use the infrastructure must bring value to the city. So it does have to be, a great product at an affordable, competitive rate, but they also have to bring strong service. They have to have financial sustainability. We do not want someone jumping onto the network, offering some great products, making some profit margins, and then leaving the network. We're looking really for people that are going to come and use this network for over a decade long to bring value to the city, just like Sci-Fi is doing with our risk of investment. Next slide, please. So that really is the network. And I guess just to summarize, it's over $100 million, well over $100 million of private investment, no taxpayer subsidy, no municipal subsidy. We will not be leaving anyone behind. It is citywide. It is true open access. Any ISP can use this infrastructure. People will have freedom of choice. We are very much going to stimulate that economic development growth through this platform. You will be on a pedestal compared to all of your municipal neighbors. But how do we engage the people, the businesses? How do we make them aware of this, the magnitude of what's coming to them with your blessing and direction? Sci-Fi invest in, on a weekly basis, sponsorships through the likes of food trucks, sponsorships of local events, track, softball teams. Our biggest success to date, we have found from a community engagement, from a neighborhood engagement, has been food trucks. So in the neighborhood where we are actively constructing on a week-by-week basis, Sci-Fi pays for a food truck to be outside in that particular neighborhood. No one pays for the food. That's free of charge to the people. And everyone gets to meet the ISPs that are serving on the network. Everybody gets to ask questions of the ISP, but more so, everybody gets to ask questions of each other. So it's very much a stimulating environment we don't take a hands-off approach. We want to know what can we do better? What do you want as a community for the ISPs to bring to the community? And this really is a good feedback opportunity. The next slide, please. We also have a heavy presence online through to the dedicated website for yourself. So our dedicated website we have for each and every individual fiber city community that we invest into, showing you how we're going to break down the city into what we call multiple work zones. Each work zone is dedicated on a particular distance. As you can see, when you're coming, it allows you to pre-register your interest so we can get ahead of the game and plan your fiber connectivity accordingly. And then we also have the flyers giving you a bit more what it's all about. We actually provide the door hangers as well, but in a multilingual state, and also business cards. One thing we really pride ourselves on is, I do continue to reiterate though, it is customer service, it's community engagement. So as well as employing people to help construct the infrastructure, we also employ what's called community liaisons. And these are individual people that are also walking the streets of the active construction neighborhood that we're performing in. And it allows the people, the constituents, the businesses to, and these individuals are branded as well, so very visible, but it allows the community to engage with that sci-fi representative, that construction representative, and ask them questions, because I'm sure you know yourselves, if it's a municipal project and you're, say, just resurfacing an area, or you're doing supporting a utility project, often you just receive a letter in the mail or it's just signage, but not necessarily any physical active involvement or presence from that particular utility organization. And that's where Sci-Fi just wants to be the best neighbor we can when we access your public right away, by just keeping everybody informed on a day-by-day, week-by-month and year basis. The next slide, please. We also do it locally in regards to advertising. So what we're looking for here is, what is tasteful to you? What works for you? Every city we are investing in is very different, and they know what works for them. So right now we advertise on bus shelters, gas stations, we sponsor park benches, we've done the billboards, but this is just a flavor of what other people are doing. And I say, you know your community, and you know what your community appreciates and doesn't appreciate, and we just welcome that feedback as we go through our marketing and strategy in combination with feedback from city staff and local individuals. Next slide, please. And the same to be said within the media. What type of information do people wish to receive in the media from whether it be an email, whether it be flyers, or it be local advertising again? This is all just about feedback. Sci-Fi, the reason Sci-Fi takes this approach we're having right now as a workshop, Sci-Fi wants to be a partner with you. We do not wish to turn up, pull a permit and say, okay, we're now starting construction. This is a large scale investment and risk that we wish to take on you, and also, you know, with your blessing on us. If we're going to build it, let's just build it right first time. Let's not band-aid this. Let's look at the vision of the city. How do you wish to grow? How do you wish to revitalize particular areas in the community? Do you have areas that you wish to turn into new areas for economic development? Sci-Fi wants those ideas, because what we're going to do is take that information and put it into our design. We want to ensure that the way the network is designed has the capacity to grow with you as you grow as a community. Next slide, please. I think this is really what the outcomes, you know. So my objective is that this just sounds incredibly compelling, and you wish you already had this in the ground to support many different initiatives you have. But with that outcome, and you know, as you can see on the screen, it is a multi-million-dollar investment. It is private. There's no taxpayer dollars. The people are going to have so much more choice, competition, affordable pricing. If they don't wish to have that, then they can stick with the provider of internet service they have right now, the TV, the phone service they have right now. Sci-Fi just wants to give the people more options, next generation options. It is really the fastest infrastructure in the ground from a residential connectivity in the country. And we do support the disadvantaged. It is open access, locally. It really is about digital divide and driving equality. Probably from a municipal's perspective, you will have access to a 900-mile citywide infrastructure. So there will not be a municipal facility within nominal feet that you cannot receive fiber connectivity, compared to the activities that you're looking at over the last 12 to 18, 24 months, where you're looking to pay for it yourself. I'm really here with that big checkbook and would like to do that for you. So with that said, I've kept this very high, very light, and hopefully in a way that has induced probably some initial or range of questions. But this is what we're doing across the country, 37 different cities in 10 different states, the same offering to everyone, and there's just nothing like this in the entire country. And I really hope you recognize that and really want to adopt this large-scale 5C investment for the people.
All right, thanks, Scott. I've got excuse me, one more slide, and then we're going to go into questions. This is just a summary of the network agreement itself. There are two contracts or two agreements. One is a development contract, and that's associated with it's a cooperative agreement between Sci-Fi and the city for how we deal with right-of-way and permitting and things like that. It also has the fee structures that Sci-Fi would pay to the city for use of right-of-way and for connections that are out there. The second agreement is the actual Smart City agreement. That's our ability to use their networks. That one's a little bit different. And we'll talk about that in a second. You notice there's not a lot of numbers up here, and I'll explain why there isn't. So basically what Sci-Fi is committing to is installing a citywide fiber optic infrastructure. It'll be fully complete within 48 months. So this is not a forever project. It'll be less than that, but within 4 years, that's the timeline. Initial connectivity could be available as soon as 18 months. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong when we get to the question side. The city will assist in right-of-way access and other permitting needs. Sci-Fi will assure one or more internet service providers are available to provide high-speed internet service. Sci-Fi or its designee will manage the physical infrastructure. Of course, this is something that I'm personally excited about. The city will have the ability to use the fiber optic infrastructure for its own internal communication needs. Existing assets will be connected with the ability to add future connections as desired. And we're looking north of, it could be as many as 400 assets ultimately connected. And then when you start thinking, future-proof, it could be 1,000 if we do things like Internet of Things and all these. If we put sensor data out there, we don't know what we're going to do yet. This provides us a mechanism to get there. And last but not least, the fees paid by Sci-Fi and the cost of services to the city offset, or largely offset. They, over time, there may be some drift one way or another, but it is a win-win on both sides in a significant way. That's why we're so excited about this. And this is unique. There is no other provider in the entirety of the United States that's doing this. And I think that's what makes this incredible for us. And with that, I will move on to clarifying questions.
Stuart.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what are the handcuffs in this deal for us? You with me? I mean, they're going to invest a lot of money.
Yes.
So we're agreeing to what or how long? And how do we break it can we break it?
So we can break it. The development agreement's for 30 years, the initial with 2 10-year extensions. And you can understand from their investment perspective, they needed something longer than 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
We do have the capability, if they default, if they're not providing ISPs, that it can break at that point. We've got language in there that they would remove. We tried to put language in there that we could take over and potentially, but they were like, no, we just remove the infrastructure that's there. So their goal is to be successful making this investment and bring multiple ISPs and stuff into the city to provide this service. So there really is no catch except the utilization of our right-of-way to lay what's equivalent to probably 1 inch in diameter, maybe 2 inches in diameter as far as infrastructure. That's going to be GPS located and identified within our GIS site. So we'll know where it is. There are language in there that we notify them before construction projects. They notify us before anything else that, connectivity or issues they're going to have. They would go permit through our standard right-of-way permit process through the citizen self-service portal and everything else, submit online. We'd have a group that would work with them. They were paying us quarterly a set fee at this point until they reached the number of connections that would exceed that amount, and then it rose from there. As soon as we start connecting facilities, we would start paying them back for the Smart Cities agreement. Everything is laid out. Again, we've been working on this for about 6 months to make sure there were no pitfalls necessarily in everything else that's there. So we don't know. We will be able to talk with them and vet through kind of who the ISPs kind of are. They do want to bring in the best of the best. I think Scott's alluded they are working with a tier 1 ISP as well, but they haven't announced who that is. That's exciting because now you've got somebody with some real other financial backing and horsepower as well. So for us, we've heard a lot of demand from the community on just the poor quality that we have of service in various areas, and it's random. We've had people say, I don't know, you know, why are they putting Frontier in Missouri City, but they're not putting it in Sugar Land? It's like, well, that's not up to us. We don't control the franchise utilities. So we've looked at it. Meredith's looked at it. We've gone forward and backward trying to figure out, you know, what are any issues at all and stuff at this point in time. And it is what it is out there. As Steve mentioned, the city overall, if we elect, as things continue to change, as technology changes, we have the ability to add on to it. There's a cost that comes with that, and there's a 10-year window where they're locked, and then they grow to a set amount above beyond that. We would pay, from what we've looked at, numbers run considerably more than that to go with another provider, and even our current state with some other that we're working with right now, it's expensive, and the price structure, the citywide coverage, and everything else just gives us ultimate flexibility long term.
Thank you.
Carol.
Okay, thank you. Now, this term smart cities has been used several times tonight. So can you further explain what is smart city?
It all depends on who you want to talk to. In all honesty, that we've had that discussion with the city for years of what is a smart city. In our case, it's more like what we don't know yet, right? The ability we want to have in the future of adding things, the Internet of Things, doing more services via connectivity, monitoring of all of our infrastructure, you know, traffic data, you know, other data running through the system automatically rather than having to be called upon or being a DSL or other slower type of interface. So there's other things we won't know. How do we use that data? What is that data providing to us from a standpoint of traffic control or LPR tied into it and police dispatch, everything else? I mean, who knows what it could be used for going forward? That's where the smart cities agreement, it's just that, I mean, you know, I don't think there's a dumb city out there, you know, but it is, how do you want to use this technology to your advantage? I think it's really up to us as far as how we take it moving forward.
Okay, and then they mentioned they do this with micro trenching, where it's 1 to 2 inches wide, and it's about a 1 to 2 inch diameter fiber, and then it's about a foot deep.
Yes,
and I know lots of cables and lines are dug. I mean, that's goes quick and easy, cheaper that way. I know lots of cables and lines are dug 2 feet, even 6 feet deep. So with it dug relatively shallow, are there any issues with the line being cut? Like somebody goes and wants to plant a tree there or something. I mean, how does
Sure. I mean, there always are. Remember, they'll be in our right of way. So as far as there's some control there from a standpoint of other franchises or utilities working in that area, because we'll have knowledge of where they're at. We'll be able to work with them and notify them as anybody else would if they call in utility locates. When you look at some lines laid to people's houses, it's hung on fence lines, or it might be as deep as an inch within the grass. So we've looked at that. We think where they want to install it within the Parkway area, the depth they want to install it avoids any conflict with our infrastructure. That was the first thing, our water, our wastewater, and everything else. So making sure that is acceptable from our staff's perspective and just the city operation in general. So you're always going to have the risk, though. We have it on our fiber right now that runs between PD and City Hall. It gets hit regularly, whether it be our own contractors or CenterPoint or anybody else that might be boring underneath the street or anything else, because, and that's just a risk you take. Again, the redundancy helps that. So the redundancy keeps a single break, not from impacting and shutting part of the network down, which is one of our issues we have now on ours, just because it's single connection, point to point. So there's redundancies within an area, which helps us. So if they do have a break, they're responsible for maintenance and operation. They get out there and fix it and go from there.
Okay, so does this replace 5G then? And do you have fiber optics or 5G, or is it?
No,
how does this work?
It won't replace 5G. This is if you want to connect everything in your house, and then you connect Wi-Fi with your phone or your iPads. Your system itself is connected via fiber, rather than using a 5G just connection through your phone. I mean, I was in Austin this weekend and had 5G connection, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't search anything. It was so slow, but it was touted 5G, and both my city phone and my phone had 5G on it, but I still couldn't. Took forever. So, but it does not replace it. That is separate. That is your T-Mobiles, AT&Ts. Right. So we'll still deal with their deployment within their nodes per the ordinance and everything else. But this is completely separate.
Okay, and so this is a multi-million-dollar investment at no cost to the city. So then how do they make their money? Is it off the ISPs then?
Scott?
You're absolutely right. So, yeah, Sci-Fi, using a wholesale model, we ultimately wholesale access to multiple different ISPs. at a rate where they can come onto the network, pay Sci-Fi for access to the network, still make their necessary profit margin that they need to keep them sustainable, but be able to sell these premium services at highly competitive and affordable pricing. And maybe just to add a bit of flavor to that as well for you, the key thing for Sci-Fi, which people don't realize, is we don't just want one ISP, because if we have just one ISP, it presents a high risk environment on that investment. Our goal is multiple ISPs, and people don't realize, they often think, oh, you just need one. It's like, no. To dilute the risk, long-term sustainability, competition is a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And also, Scott, you mentioned that the city of Arlington is one of your customers. So have you had any timeline or other issues with Arlington as you've started this process with them?
No. So Arlington has just gone into the permitting process, and they're super excited. They actually made a video. I think it was, and I will get this wrong because it wasn't necessarily my video, but it was a Connect Arlington with the local media, showing people how the construction was happening, a community engagement video, ultimately with the local media and press. But no, they're absolutely super excited and can't wait for us to actually start hooking up customers for the ISPs.
And what's the status of the Odessa fiber optics?
Odessa right now is in the engineering design. And let me add that a different way. If I was building, and I'm just going to put this into context with respect to your good community as well. If I was building just straight down Main Street, I'd probably in the ground in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Because I'm offering to build your entire city, we just want to do it the right way. So we don't just have like an approval and we go, okay, just by simple example, we're all good to go this evening, and I turn up at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, start construction. That's just not the right way to do it. It takes months and months. Often you won't really see us until we put a spade in the ground for about 12 months. And there is method in that madness that we really do need to know how you wish to grow as a community. We want that economic development story. We want to put that into our design on our dime, not on your dime. We want to take that future growth and risk. And then once we have that, we need someone or a team walking every street, looking at every road. What don't we know? What have your engineering team not told us? So we can further design the network and diverse it accordingly. Once we have those, often one of the biggest poles in the tent that we have to work with is the power company, making sure we've got the power procured and ready for this network to be lit up to serve people. So though it sounds great, we've got a lot of those bells and whistles that I've spoken about, when you actually get down to ground level, there is a heck of a lot of work that really needs to do on an engineering. So that's why we often say, don't hate us that we're not turning up tomorrow morning. We're going to get there as quick as we can, but we want to engineer it the right way for you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm good.
Thank you. So I love everything you're saying.
Oh, yeah, right. You lunches meetings with me before you. Okay,
so some of my questions. You can. But so monopoly keeps coming to my mind, and I know that you're not trying to monopolize the whole market, but kind of you are. So the question I have is, if there's any other provider that comes along, they're out. They're probably ISP, so they would have to qualify under what you're doing, but you're probably bringing in your own ISPs, so that kind of makes sense. But as a city, because we're not really bringing in ISPs or we're not working with any other providers for broadband or whatever it is you're doing, do we have any oversight? Do we have anybody in our city who knows what's going on so we can keep an eye on this? So we have an idea what we're doing here? Because, I mean, as great as you sound, it sounds like Santa Claus is coming in the middle of the house at night, and we have no idea what's going on until the next morning, either good or bad.
So I'm going to equate it to the current situation with franchise utilities. We have no control over franchise utilities, except for they have to permit, they go where they want to go and make the investment, and that's it. I think we have much more control and working with Scott and knowledge. In-house, we've got the knowledge as far as what is provided from a standpoint of speed, flexibility, continuity, and everything else for us and redundancies. The fact that we don't have to maintain and operate it, they do, but it is advantage, and you heard Scott, it's advantageous for them to bring more ISPs online. Now, do we know who those ISPs are? No. We will work with them to they'll share with us who they're talking to, but those ISPs have to meet, and Scott, you may talk about, those ISPs have to meet certain thresholds for them to commit, because like he said, they want them on their system for 10 years or more, because those ISPs that's how Sci-Fi is making some of their money. by doing that. So it doesn't do any good to have a fly-by-night ISP pop up. And to the monopoly standpoint, if AT&T runs everywhere, that's who you get to deal with. If Comcast runs everywhere, that's who you get to deal with. Now, if AT&T, Comcast, Verizon all invest the dollars, which they haven't yet today, and I don't think they're going to, now you don't have any of them, or you might have one of them. So that's a monopoly. And in this case here, you're going to have a choice of if there's 3, 4, 5, 6 ISPs that they're providing service, that are providing service on Sci-Fi's network, you get to pick as the owner, and you get to see what plans they offer and everything else. So,
Okay.
Kind of my thing.
If I may just to add, I guess, some colour to that, and you're absolutely right when you look at it from a monopolistic environment. I don't disagree with you. The key thing about Sci-Fi's investment is it's non-exclusive access to your public right-of-way. So if someone else does wish to turn up tomorrow and offer you an identical, though it doesn't really exist, offer you an identical offering, then they are more than welcome to do so. So we have a non-exclusive arrangement with you. Really, this relationship here is all about you just granting us access to your public right-of-way for the longest period of time. Yeah. When I showed you the ISPs, that's why I purposely showed just an example of the ISPs we already have a partnership with. You know, these are ISPs that are 10, 20 years old, large scale, actually building their own networks themselves, highly credible. Actually, usually the first thing we do straight out the gate is how good is your customer service, not the price, not really the branding. How good do you represent your customers? Because the key thing for us is we need to bring quality and value to the people. People need to know they're going to like the person that's going to serve them. But yeah, so also if AT&T, if Comcast, they want to use this network, they are more than welcome to use this network.
I definitely will. Thank you. And I think that answered my question when you said you're not exclusive.
Yes.
There's no monopoly. That makes perfect sense. And my last question for you, Scott, is why would you choose Sugar Land? Why did you choose Sugar Land?
So a couple of different answers I'll give to that. And I guess the fluffy answer is, if I can say it that way, you are progressive. You're looking to change. You are looking to change the environment, the community. You're looking to grow. You absolutely recognize that you have your neighbors around you that are being progressive and growing quicker. They're trying to attract people to their communities, both constituents and businesses, to add to the tax base to grow those communities. Sci-Fi has dealt with many communities that just don't recognize that. They're very stagnant. They're not looking to grow. They're not looking to support that constituent base. So the key thing Sci-Fi looks for is, what have you done today? So we don't just knock on your door and on a whim, hoping you're interested. We actually have a 6 to 12 month window before the team ever actually calls you. And we look at your council meetings. We look at the topics in hand, like the previous one that was ahead of me today. What are you doing, with multi-dwelling units and other things? How are you handling and how do you address those topics? And that's really, that adds to, do we think if we spend money on you as elected officials and the people of the community will really utilize this for many years to come? On the flip side of there is, do the numbers work? Do you have enough premises in the community to date with enough construction distance where I can create a pro forma, like a long-term pro forma, if we wish to call it, an amortization model, that I'm able to wholesale network access to multiple ISPs where they can come on the network, make profits and sell services to the people at affordable rates. So both of those things go hand in hand.
Great answer. Thank you.
My pleasure.
William?
I have a ton of questions, and I'm going to apologize, Scott. I don't hear very well, and you are nothing more than an echo to me. So if I'm repeating a question that he's answered, just go. We've covered that. I apologize.
We covered that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Of course, the mayor would be the one. Okay, so as someone in contracting understands this somewhat, AT&T just went through our greater community and put in fiber optics. And service-wise, I don't know how many sewer lines were blown out because it was just a social media debacle at best. It all got done. It all got completed. The installs were in backyards more than front yards. I'm kind of curious, the pictures that he provided were front yard installs. Is that what we're going to do here?
Yes. So essentially the agreement is the non-exclusive agreement is the use of city right-of-way for them to lay their fiber. So they don't have to be in easements and everything else. but then they pay per connection, just like a franchise. They pay us a fee for every connection they put on their system. So we will work with them. There will be a single point of contact from the city that will work with them. Our inspectors will kind of be with them in the field as they lay out the plan. So we will know where their infrastructure is, where it goes, and everything else.
And I appreciate all that. But I also, like we all do, we know Commonwealth, we know our older communities. This appears, depending on if that's the install process, this is going to rain havoc on our trees in Sugar Land, along our roadways, go through Sweetwater, go through any of them. I mean, we've got these massive trees. And what I just saw, if that's the install, this is going to be a nightmare.
Scott, I'll jump in, but you jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the discussion that they will be having as they start through the engineering perspective is looking at those areas. It's like we've told them with all the concrete driveways and roads, there is no open cutting of any of that. So you have to bore. So there's areas when we met with them and their contractor months ago, they talked about if they look at long stretches and it's too cumbersome to micro trench, they'll come in and directional drill and bore that section. Now they may have to go pothole to put connections at each location, but they'll do what's most effective in standpoint. And we'll look at protecting roots and everything else as we go through the process.
And by the way, I don't know, so I'm just asking. So as I was preparing for this and I was doing my quick research, Sci-Fi, not S-I-F-I, but S-I-F-Y, has a terrible reputation. So everybody that does any review on Sci-Fi, make sure you're spelling it S-I-F-I. Otherwise, Scott gets a sore nose. With all that said, so I'm assuming the install can happen. I'm assuming they're not exclusive. So if someone decides, well, I still want AT&T or I still want Xfinity or whatever they want, they can still have that.
Absolutely.
So here's my strange question going back to Suzanne's joy here, or her happiness about this. I'm just looking for the other shoe to fall, right? So it's certainly a benefit to our city as a municipality, certainly, because the connectivity alone, if all we were talking about was LPR, it would be an answer to a recent new territory issue. If that's all we were talking about, it would be cool connectivity. I'm just trying to understand his motivation, their motivation, I should say, their motivation to do what would cost, in my opinion, an astronomical amount of money to cut in 900 miles of this connection. And our benefit is it doesn't cost the municipality anything. And I'm like, okay, I'm missing something in this, and maybe the shoe falls later. I have no idea. And I know that from what I read, Arlington started in mid-21, and if I read it correctly, their full up was going to be 28 or 25. Scott can confirm that. So they're really new into this in Arlington. I haven't seen anything bad, but I'm thinking, I mean, do we, there's so many unknowns. I want to be excited and happy, but I've got all these. Are you kidding me? You're going to cut through trees and blah, blah, blah.
No, I mean, I'll jump in from the number of complaints that we do or concerns we hear from residents alone of the inadequacy of high-speed internet and access to anything. I know Councilor Jacobson has said stuff about, I get these notifications that they're doing this over in Missouri City. Why aren't we doing it here? And the mayor's gotten calls. The franchise utilities, they put their own investment strategy together. They put their own plan together, and they build where they want to build, where they think they can get a performance and a return on investment. That's why we've been knocking them for about 6+ months of just, it's too good to be true. Wait a minute, what's the other catch? And their whole goal is invest. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, it's invest, it's get ISPs so you get people connecting on your network and stuff, because that's how they make money. Multiple ISPs, multiple platforms, opportunities for people to get connectivity. But right now we don't. Mark Toon, before he left, he was, can you start around, can you start around 98 and stuff? And we need that. Yeah, businesses need it. We've talked to Elizabeth Huffton in the business park and stuff. We have businesses that are struggling because we don't have enough high speed. And we can't drive that narrative enough with the franchise utilities. Because frankly, if it's not in it money-wise for them, they're not going to invest.
And by the way, if I may, I'm not suggesting this is a bad idea. I'm just trying to understand the idea. And another thing just came to my mind as you were talking was with our new water meter update, you know, these lines will go right along every water meter in Sugar Land. So I guess they just feed it under those new meters that were installed.
All that will be coordinated as far as.
Oh my goodness.
Just think every concrete driveway, they're going to be construction a hole underneath the driveway.
Wow.
Yeah, it's.
Wow. I'll leave it alone. Wow.
Good questions.
I would, I guess if I could, I would probably say this, just certainly, naturally we work with the arborists, you know, we're doing this because we're doing so many soft digs across the country. This isn't the first rodeo in regards to how we approach that infrastructure. But I guess the question really to be asked is, people are putting infrastructure in the ground, you know, and the councilman mentioned about AT&T, and yes, the difference there with AT&T is, once AT&T have that in, you are subjected to what AT&T want to sell you, at the price points they want to sell you at, based on the services they want to offer you. That is the monopolistic environment you're used to. You have nowhere else to go. They are building that infrastructure underground, in the actual space that you have, you know, a congestion of utilities. Sci-Fi, yes, is building it higher. The intention is not to hit anything. It is to coordinate that infrastructure with the actual city SIP programs, which is why we actually have a dedicated 24/7 field service crew that actually lives in the city for the project. But the major benefit to the community, both if you just talk about it from a disruption perspective and then the future aspect of it is, it's a common network that anyone can use. It doesn't discriminate the ISPs. We want all these ISPs on, but you're no longer subject to a monopoly that tells you what they want to sell you, the price points they want to sell you at, or the services they want to offer you. You will now have this range of new choices, affordable choices, and it won't just be about broadband, because this infrastructure is not just about quick, fast internet speed to the home. It really is about the quality of life for the people. This type of infrastructure allows telemedicine, home security, IoT devices, connected devices in home, because it allows for any type of ISP. And that really is the difference. So you can have the monopolistic environment with AT&T, which they are building, we all do know that, or you can have a common, neutral, open network. We're under a dig once policy. Once this is in the ground, albeit non-exclusive, no one should ever need to dig again to put this infrastructure in the ground, because it's true neutral open access.
And by the way, I appreciate that. Again, I hear an echo. Sorry, I'm sure that was brilliant, and somebody will give me a transcript later. And I'm not trying to question his business model. I don't want you to hear any of that. I'm sure it's a great business model. What I understand is your network would be the roadway that all of these ISPs would take into someone's life. Is that okay to compare?
Yeah, you're correct. We are the multi-lane superfast highway.
Yes. Okay, I think I understood. So you would essentially be controlling the roadway for all the ISPs that don't have to come back and do their own fiber optic. They don't have to come and do that and attempt to control. You're the roadway for the ISPs into our lives. I think that's correct.
They just build the road and charge the toll. That's all.
What's that?
They build the road and charge the toll.
Right. Another toll road. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Stuart.
Do we have any numbers of the savings to residents that from other cities that they've done?
Scott, do you have any of that information from where you've got networks?
That's perfectly fine. So I'll do it from a standard perspective, because the Fiber City Aid program for the disadvantaged families is very unique to Sci-Fi. There's nothing like it in the country. And that'll be a disservice to the ISPs on a standard basis. So on the standard where gigabit speeds are being provided right now in the markets where we're serving, where it's AT&T gigabit fiber, or Charter Communications with their coax environment. AT&T, I think, rolls right now at about $80 per month for a residential gigabit service. depending upon which ISP you're using, our ISPs start at gigabit service symmetrical on fiber at $65, and we have some at $70. So based upon that speed of technology, our ISPs are right now that will be the cheapest in town on that scenario.
And you would use local employment, how many full-time jobs or part-time jobs, and the duration of these jobs would be 2 years, 10 years, 30 years?
And that really is the grey cloud. For us, it's ideally to employ as many people as possible. Availability people is one thing, training them is another. The way we work it is this, that we have what's called our transient crew. So that is the experienced individuals that know how to build these networks. So they will come in, and then based on that transient crew, the remaining portion will be the people we employ. So I know that doesn't answer your question really in any shape of imagination on regards to numbers, but our intention is to employ as many people as possible. Those stats I'll be able to give you once we get through to the engineering of actually construction, because it will also come down to how many construction crews will you allow in the city once we actually get ramp up. So we'll start very slowly, but once we're in full speed, how many construction crews will you allow to deploy in different sections of the city so they're not all on top of each other? And how many you allow will dictate how many people we're able to employ to support local economic development.
Anybody else? Questions?
Yeah. So when you bore, so then how deep do you bore? Is it still foot down? You have to go deeper when you bore?
Standard. So standard depth that you'd be used to based on your ordinances. Our code.
It could be anywhere from a foot to 3 feet, 4 feet.
It's basically whatever you need to.
Could be under it. There's drainage culverts there that they've got to go under, then they'll go under those based off engineering review and then, field application.
Do you have to go under driveways or cut driveways?
They'll go under driveways, excuse me, not cut.
Anything else, sir?
Aprons.
All under.
Driveway aprons, under the apron.
Yes.
Okay, anything else?
Fine.
So are we in agreement, direction, council direction? We say, Steve, please proceed.
Tonight.
Are we all good? Are we all?
Oh, you're there. You're back.
Please proceed.
That'll work. Thank you very much.
The mayor disapparated.
Okay.
Disapparated. Okay.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
I didn't see you. Good.
City number 4, City Council and Manager report. City Council member reports. Let's start with Suzanne.
Oh, really? Okay.
You can pass it if you like.
I'm going to try and do something that no one else did, so that should be great. On the 19th, I did the Venetian Homeowners Association, which was awesome. Oh, he's not here, so I can do that one. I did the Astros Caravan on the 23rd, where we got to see the Commissioner's World Series trophy. And I'll leave you for HGAC. Thank you.
Carol?
Okay. Well, I attended the grand opening of Pop Top Burgers, which is in District 4. Yay! and the Kroger Shopping Center, 2 doors down from Clean Juice that opened 2 months ago. And then Suzanne Williams Stewart and I attended the local government summit hosted by the Fort Bend Central Appraisal District. So Jordan Wise, who's the chief appraiser there, spoke, and also we had a speaker from the Dallas Federal Reserve who spoke on regional economic trends. Dr. Stephen Kleinberg spoke on demographic trends, and we had a legislative update. And then I also attended a World of Islamic Arts Gala at the Museum Fine Arts in Houston.
Thank you, Carol. Jennifer?
No report.
William?
No report, sir.
Well, in addition, with these two ladies, I attended the HGAC annual meeting, and also yesterday the Fort Bend ISD, what do you call it?
Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees reception.
And the chamber. Remember, we attended the chamber thing.
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we did. We did that too.
Yeah, we attended the Fort Bend Chamber new board members welcome.
Yeah, we did that. And I did a lot last week that I don't remember. Jennifer, city manager report.
Just a real quick acknowledgement that today was a hard day for a lot of people in the Houston region with the storms. So thinking about other cities on the east side that were hit, and just really grateful for all the hard work of our staff, everyone from Public Works to fire, PD, dispatch, and a lot of others doing a lot of hard work to get roadways cleared and respond to calls for services. So just grateful for our great staff.
Yay, staff.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Feel free to turn off your microphone.